Hey guys, tonight we drift gently back to an ancient Egyptian village nestled along the Nile's lush, lazy banks. Imagine for a moment, you're waking up just as dawn creeps across the river, tinting the sky pale lavender and orange. A soft breeze whispers through papyrus reeds outside, rustling them like delicate paper fingers. Birds chatter quietly, almost politely, as if hesitant to wake you too abruptly from your dreams. It's peaceful here, deceptively peaceful, because, let's face it, you probably won't survive a week with crocodiles, hippos, and zero Wi-Fi. But don't worry, tonight you're just a visitor, safe beneath your covers. So before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And let me know down in the comments your location and local time. I'm always curious where my stories reach out in the night. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. The Nile's gentle murmurs coax you fully awake, pulling you from dreams into a world painted gold by early sunlight. Stretching lazily, you rise from a reed mat placed snugly on a raised mud platform, designed perfectly for cool airflow underneath. You pause for a second, considering how your plush mattress at home would seem hilariously luxurious here. But these villagers, ancestors to the grand pharaohs themselves, wouldn't trade their simple mats for anything softer. Stepping carefully, you move barefoot across cool clay floors toward the modest doorway. Your fingertips brush against woven linen curtains, feeling a texture soft as your favourite worn-out t-shirt. It's light, airy, and does wonders for keeping biting insects out, or at least most of them. Historians still argue whether ancient Egyptians actually slept well, given the constant threats of pesky Nile mosquitoes, but let's give them the benefit of the doubt tonight. Pushing aside the linen curtain, you step outside. Immediately, your senses overflow with morning delights. The air holds a refreshing dampness from the nearby Nile, mixed with an earthy scent of mud and papyrus. Village life is stirring already. Your neighbours are up, splashing water from clay jars onto their faces and chatting softly with sleepy morning voices. One woman laughs, gently teasing a young boy still yawning widely. Another is vigorously shaking mats outside her doorway, muttering something about scorpions. Probably best if you pretend you didn't overhear that. Nearby, a small family of ducks waddles confidently down the narrow path, quacking to no one in particular, utterly oblivious to their comedic grace. You smile, realizing some things never change. Ducks have probably always acted as if they own the place. As you move closer to the Nile's edge, your feet sink slightly into soft, sandy soil, still cool from the night. The river sprawls in majestic laziness before you, stretching wide and slow, its surface shimmering like liquid gold beneath the dawn sky. Farther down, you spot fishermen already launching narrow reed boats, gliding soundlessly across the mirrored water. One of them waves lazily, silently greeting the new day, and you. From your vantage point, you see rich black mud deposited along the banks, life-giving silt left by the Nile's recent floods. Without that thick, dark layer of nutrients, Egypt itself might never have flourished, and pyramids would remain just ambitious piles of rocks. Here, by the riverbank, you're reminded why ancient Egyptians revered the Nile, calling it their great lifeline, a god who fed, clothed, and comforted them. Still, you wonder if they ever got annoyed at how often their yards flooded, especially when your own basement flooding feels catastrophic. The morning breeze picks up again, gently shaking clusters of date palms overhead. You hear faint rustles as dried palm fronds shift, whispering their quiet morning greetings. Peering upward, you notice a group of mischievous monkeys scurrying among branches, dropping occasional date pits toward unsuspecting villagers below. One man looks upward, rolls his eyes and chuckles knowingly. This is clearly not his first encounter with monkey mischief. You decide monkeys tossing date pits might be ancient Egypt's version of being caught in traffic. Inevitable, annoying, yet oddly endearing. Your attention drifts further down the path, where several mud brick houses stand clustered together. Smoke begins to curl lazily from cooking fires, their fragrant aromas mingling in the air. Somewhere nearby, bread is baking, its scent rich and comforting, warm like a morning hug. Already you anticipate breakfast, simple, fresh and flavourful, eaten outdoors as the village wakes around you. But first your eyes return to the Nile, watching its waters ripple lazily, almost hypnotically, reminding you that everything here flows with the river. The Egyptians built their entire existence around this steady rhythm, allowing the Nile's predictable seasons to structure their days and define their destinies. Without this endless rhythmic pulse, there would be no flourishing villages, no fields of golden grain, no civilization nestled against its banks, and certainly no sleepy storytellers sitting here tonight. And now, with morning fully upon you, the village hums alive. Voices grow louder, laughter clearer, footsteps quicker. The warmth intensifies gently, promising a hot, productive day. You sense the villagers' quiet eagerness. Chores await, and there's no luxury of sleeping in when you live this close to a river that insists on flooding your farmland yearly. But don't worry, you're just visiting tonight, and you'll watch the story unfold safely from your soft, dry bed. No crocodiles invited. You leave the Nile's shimmering morning behind and wander back toward the heart of your village, drawn by gentle laughter, murmurs of conversation, and the soft, rhythmic tapping of hands shaping mud bricks. The houses here are charmingly humble, their earthy walls reflecting hues of soft brown, baked golden in the sunlight. They're modest, yet sturdy, built to withstand the Nile's floods, blistering heat, and generations of lively family drama. You pause to admire how resourceful humans have always been. With a handful of mud, some straw, and patient craftsmanship, entire communities sprang up. Approaching the nearest dwelling, your eyes roam over its walls. Dried mud bricks stacked neatly, layered carefully, to form sturdy walls, each brick bearing faint imprints of the villagers' palms. It's funny how something as mundane as fingerprints becomes deeply personal here. Each brick, a quiet reminder that lives and stories built these homes. You catch yourself smiling softly, imagining ancient kids press their palms into bricks, giggling just as kids today press fingers into wet cement, immortalizing their mischief. Peeking through an open doorway draped loosely with linen, you enter. The inside surprises you with how cozy it feels, though spaciousness isn't exactly its standout quality. Immediately, your eyes adjust to dimness after the brightness outside, taking in the pleasant simplicity. Against one wall sits a sturdy reed chest, holding linen clothing, while simple reed mats cover raised platforms that function as beds. You recall that ancient Egyptians preferred sleeping elevated, not just for ventilation, but also to avoid unwelcome nocturnal visits from curious scorpions or ambitious snakes. It's one thing to enjoy camping. It's entirely another to find yourself in a forced cohabitation with Egypt's creepier wildlife. A quick glance at the home's layout reveals a sensible logic. Compact, practical, and communal. You find spaces where entire families would gather to cook, eat, talk, and laugh around glowing fires. The smell of wood smoke lingers faintly, comforting like the memory of a family barbecue. The hearth here isn't just a kitchen, it's a living room, dining room, gossip centre, and nightly entertainment venue, all rolled into one. Historians still argue whether private bedrooms were rare or non-existent in typical Egyptian village homes. Some suggest privacy wasn't much of a concern. Everyone was family, neighbours practically siblings, and secrets virtually impossible to keep. Others believe that clever reed partitions were occasionally used, giving at least the illusion of personal space. You smirk a little, picturing teenage Egyptians complaining about a lack of privacy to parents who simply roll their eyes. Apparently, even back then, parents were skilled at ignoring dramatic sighs. As you move further inside, you notice something intriguing. The walls bear faded traces of paintings, not elaborate tomb-like murals, but simple illustrations of fish, plants, and smiling faces, perhaps symbols to bring good luck, fertility, or merely cheerfulness. Ancient graffiti, if you will, but infinitely more tasteful. You imagine parents allowing their children to decorate these walls, quietly hoping they'd outgrow it, only to secretly adore every messy scribble. Near the home's rear, you see pottery vessels neatly arranged, each filled with precious stores: grains, dried fruits, honey, oil, essentials safeguarded against the Nile's unpredictable moods. This careful storage highlights an often overlooked Egyptian truth. While the Nile brought prosperity, its moods could quickly shift from benevolent to destructive. Preparation therefore became a matter of survival, with villagers expertly stocking up supplies as casually as you stock up before a Netflix binge. Venturing back outside, you wind through narrow paths connecting clusters of similar homes. Each dwelling feels distinct, not just in construction, but in subtle personal touches. Pots filled with blooming flowers line one doorstep, splashes of vivid colours breaking the endless browns. Elsewhere, strings of dried garlic bulbs hang like ornaments, warding off evil spirits, or perhaps just insects. Egyptians were practical, after all. Nearby, a small garden blooms vibrantly, a patchwork of herbs and vegetables carefully tended by an elderly woman humming quietly. The sight warms your heart. Ancient Egyptians didn't just survive, they lived fully, growing food and flowers side by side. Passing another dwelling, you spot small niches carved into exterior walls, perhaps for lamps or offerings to household gods. You wonder if, in these quiet pockets, villagers whispered secret prayers or simply stashed keys, assuming ancient Egyptians had keys to misplace constantly. Ahead, a woman carefully sweeps the packed earth path in front of her home, dust clouds swirling gently at her feet. She pauses to greet you, smiling warmly with kind, crinkled eyes that suggest she'd happily invite you for tea if you lingered. Hospitality, you realise, was as abundant as papyrus reeds along the Nile, turning villages into extended families where nobody stayed a stranger for long. Children scamper around corners, playing a game that looks suspiciously like tag, giggling wildly and darting swiftly among adults who pretend annoyance, but secretly delight in their chaos. One child dives inside a house, only to reappear seconds later, breathless and laughing. You suspect ancient Egyptian homes must have witnessed thousands of these tiny dramas daily. Children rushing through doorways, mothers scolding gently, fathers shaking their heads, secretly proud of their offspring's boundless energy. From a shaded corner, an elderly man watches quietly, hands skillfully mending fishing nets. He chuckles softly, muttering something about youth being wasted on the young, proof that some clichés truly are timeless. He nods kindly as you pass, his warm smile bridging millennia. Pausing again to admire your surroundings, you're struck by how thoroughly alive this village feels. These mud brick homes aren't just structures, they're woven into the fabric of human life itself, sheltering families who laughed, argued, cooked, celebrated, and comforted one another. They represent a way of living tied deeply to the Nile, each brick embodying resilience, practicality, and community spirit. And just as you're settling comfortably into village life, your stomach reminds you that breakfast awaits. Fresh bread, dates, perhaps something mysterious but delicious cooked riverside. With one last appreciative glance at these ancient homes, you move onward. Sensing your story here is only just beginning. Following your grumbling stomach, you make your way back toward the Nile, drawn irresistibly toward the tantalizing scent of freshly baked bread, mingling with smoky aromas wafting lazily along the riverbank. Village mornings aren't complete without communal breakfasts, gatherings rich with conversation, laughter, and occasionally questionable culinary choices. You step lightly along the sandy path, feeling the warm morning sun climb steadily higher, promising a day that'll be hot enough to fry an egg, assuming ancient Egyptians were into breakfast eggs, of course. As you approach, the villagers have already begun to settle in comfortably. A large woven mat spreads invitingly under the soft shade of several palm trees, creating a makeshift dining room complete with riverside views. You recognize immediately the thoughtful logic behind this location. Close enough to the Nile to cool off occasionally, yet far enough to discourage overly curious crocodiles from joining uninvited. Breakfast should always be relaxing after all, not an adrenaline sport. Joining the gathering, you find space between villagers who smile warmly, effortlessly, making room for you as if you've always belonged there. Ancient Egyptian hospitality, you realise, would shame even your grandmother's aggressive insistence on seconds. A young woman hands you freshly baked bread, a small round loaf, warm to the touch, aromatic and deliciously soft. Its golden crust yields perfectly beneath your fingertips, releasing a gentle puff of steam and the comforting aroma of grains freshly harvested along the Nile's fertile banks. As you tear off a generous piece, someone passes you a small bowl of honey. The sweetness contrasts beautifully with the earthy bread, and you find yourself momentarily understanding why Egyptians believed honey was a divine gift. You hear villagers chatting comfortably around you, debating honey sources, acacia blossoms versus wildflowers, like today's coffee enthusiasts arguing beans. Apparently, even ancient breakfasts had their hipster moments. Nearby, dried dates and figs fill small woven baskets, arranged neatly to encourage nibbling. Biting into a date, you taste sun-soaked sweetness, an ancient delicacy that provided vital energy in an era before granola bars and protein shakes became essentials for survival. You overhear a woman gently scolding her child for overindulging in figs, warning him with a knowing look about the potential stomachache ahead. You smile, sympathizing with his determined disregard, the lure of sweet figs apparently stronger than parental warnings in every era. A savoury scent draws your attention toward fish sizzling enticingly on flat clay pans placed atop glowing embers. Freshly caught from the Nile, these fish form a cornerstone of the local diet, ensuring essential protein and omega-rich goodness centuries before such concepts had fancy scientific terms. Historians still argue whether the ancient Egyptians actually enjoyed fish regularly or reserved it mainly for special occasions, like guests arriving from distant riverbanks. Regardless, the fish today smells too irresistible for you to doubt its popularity for long. As villagers pass small portions around, you taste lightly seasoned Nile perch, seasoned simply yet skillfully with salt and crushed herbs. Cooked gently until the flesh flakes tenderly, each bite feels like an authentic taste of ancient Egypt, practical yet flavourful, nourishing yet comforting. You catch sight of a man discreetly tossing tiny morsels toward a curious cat lurking nearby. He pretends not to notice the cat's increasingly assertive begging, though the creature's satisfied purring soon gives him away. Cats clearly held their human servants firmly in paw long before memes made it fashionable. You notice another dish, somewhat mysterious, placed discreetly to one side. A brave soul explains, it's a special concoction made from onions, lentils and spices, supposedly excellent for boosting energy, and allegedly, according to village rumour, also good for warding off crocodiles. You're fairly sure the crocodile bit is village humour. Surely crocodiles weren't so easily deterred, but you try it anyway. Surprisingly flavourful, it's savoury with hints of spice. A blend ancient Egyptians likely relied on as both comfort food and remedy. You decide the crocodile repelling properties are questionable, but it's delicious enough that you'd risk finding out. Nearby, villagers dip bread into a thick, creamy paste made from crushed chickpeas. An ancestor to modern hummus, perhaps, proving Egyptians truly understood culinary greatness millennia before contemporary food bloggers claimed it as trendy. You join in, savouring how perfectly the smooth texture complements the hearty bread, feeling genuinely grateful to whoever first had the inspired idea to mash chickpeas. Conversation drifts lightly, punctuated by laughter and gentle teasing. Villagers trade stories about last night's curious dreams, recent family antics, and today's planned chores, creating a soft, steady hum of friendly banter. Occasionally, someone offers practical tips, avoiding certain fishing spots claimed by temperamental hippos, or predicting how high the Nile might rise during this year's flood. Their conversation feels timelessly familiar, echoing morning chats at cafes or around kitchen tables in your own world. Finishing your breakfast, you sip cool water from a clay cup, marvelling at how effectively these simple vessels keep liquids refreshing even as the day warms. Glancing around, you appreciate the thoughtful resourcefulness everywhere. Reed mats for comfortable seating, shaded spots selected carefully beneath palm trees, meals blending nourishment with genuine pleasure. Egyptian breakfasts, it turns out, weren't merely sustenance. They were cherished social rituals, moments of unity strengthening village bonds. As the last pieces of bread vanish and conversations wind down, villagers prepare to start their daily chores. Fishermen gather their nets, farmers rise, stretching stiff limbs before heading toward the fields, and children drift reluctantly toward household tasks, their eyes glancing longingly toward play. You stretch gently too, feeling comfortably full and energized by the warmth of community and good food. Standing, you watch the Nile flowing gently nearby, its steady rhythms grounding your thoughts. Soon you'll wander deeper into village life, exploring fields alive with labour, skillful craftspeople shaping clay and weaving reeds, and the mysteries awaiting within tiny temples and shaded courtyards. But for now, you linger just a moment longer, savouring the last warmth of the morning sun, the friendly murmurs of villagers preparing for their day, and the lingering sweetness of honey upon your tongue. Breakfast along the Nile has set your day in motion, promising further adventures ahead. With breakfast comfortably behind you, you wander away from the riverside chatter and head inland, towards sprawling fields stretching endlessly beneath a brightening Egyptian sun. Ahead lies the agricultural heart of village life, where lush crops wave gently in golden green harmony, nurtured by generations of hard-working hands. Fields here are both life-giving and demanding, places where ancient Egyptians coaxed abundance from the earth long before farm to table became trendy. You step onto a well-trodden path, winding through tall grasses and lush grains, feeling the morning's remaining coolness fade as sunlight gathers strength overhead. Here, farmers have already begun their daily rituals, bending diligently over rows of barley and emmer wheat, crops destined to become staples like bread and beer, two essentials so fundamental, Egyptians considered them practically sacred. Bread you've tasted firsthand, of course, and Egyptian beer, well, let's just say ancient happy hour would have been fascinating, even without trendy craft brews. Nearby, a pair of oxen patiently plods along, harnessed securely to a wooden plough guided skillfully by a villager whose skin is bronzed from countless days beneath the sun. The plough's sharp wooden blade carves smoothly into the rich black soil, exposing earth softened by Nile floods. You recall earlier observations The Nile wasn't just a river here, it was the village's greatest agricultural partner. Every year, its generous flood deposited fertile mud, ensuring fields thrived season after season. Without those floods, Egypt's lush fields might have been nothing more than dust and disappointment. The villagers around you labour efficiently, moving rhythmically like dancers familiar with every step. They chat lightly between tasks, laughter mingling occasionally with groans as someone jokes about aching backs and the infinite rows still waiting. Ancient farming, you realise, required not just strength and skill, but humour, patience, and a sense of community to soften relentless toil. You pause to watch a group harvesting grain, their sharp sickles slicing effortlessly through stalks heavy with ripening seeds. They work swiftly, gathering handfuls of barley into neat bundles bound tightly with twisted stalks. Each movement feels practiced and smooth, clear evidence of generations honing these precise skills. Historians still argue whether the Egyptians invented many agricultural tools independently or borrowed some from nearby cultures. Yet as you watch their practiced ease, you suspect that, regardless of origin, Egyptians certainly perfected their use. Glancing upward, you notice villagers carefully eyeing birds circling overhead. You overhear someone jokingly mutter a prayer to scare off hungry sparrows, determined to enjoy the harvest first. Farmers probably viewed these feathered intruders with a mixture of annoyance and grudging respect. After all, who could blame the birds for wanting a share of grain grown this perfectly? At the field's edge, several women and children gather fallen stalks, ensuring nothing goes to waste. Resourcefulness remains paramount here. Even scattered grains will feed animals or become extra rations in lean times. One woman gently scolds a young boy, playfully accusing him of daydreaming about swimming in the Nile instead of gathering grain. He sheepishly grins, earning a soft chuckle from elders who recognize youthful distractions as timeless as the river itself. Further along the path, you spot villagers carrying large clay jars filled with water drawn freshly from the Nile. Workers pause occasionally, eagerly drinking deeply as they rest briefly from strenuous tasks beneath a steadily intensifying sun. Egyptians wisely recognized hydration's importance long before modern fitness influencers made it trendy. You quietly appreciate their foresight, grateful today for easy access to chilled water bottles. Nearby you see villagers applying an unusual, slightly pungent mixture onto their exposed skin. Curious you approach, learning it's a paste combining herbs and, brace yourself, crocodile dung, believed effective for sun protection and repelling insects. You suppress an amused shudder, realizing ancient sunscreen came with rather questionable ingredients. Still, given a choice between insect bites or crocodile dung, you'd at least briefly consider embracing the weirdness. Amid the buzzing activity, a quiet corner draws your attention. A man sits cross-legged beneath a small palm shelter, carefully recording grain tallies onto delicate sheets of papyrus. He writes swiftly, elegant hieroglyphics forming neatly beneath skilled fingers. This diligent accounting ensured grain storage remained organised, preventing shortages during the Nile's unpredictable cycles. The ancient Egyptian bureaucracy might have been famously meticulous, but it undeniably kept villages thriving. Nearby, children chase each other playfully, racing between rows of grain, laughter echoing joyously across fields. Adults watch indulgently, quietly tolerating playful chaos as long as crops remain unharmed. Ancient Egyptians, you realise, understood that balancing work with play wasn't merely pleasant, it was essential to life's rhythm. You smile, remembering your own childhood temptation to run through neighbours' flower beds, something apparently universal across time. A soft breeze rustles grain stalks, creating whispers reminiscent of ocean waves, calm, soothing, rhythmic, Closing your eyes briefly, you savour the sound, understanding why Egyptians saw their fields as both sacred and comforting. The harvest wasn't merely sustenance, it represented survival, community pride, and generations connecting through shared purpose. These fields weren't just labour sites, they were woven deeply into village identity, giving meaning to collective effort and cooperation. Slowly, you begin retracing your steps, reluctantly, leaving fields behind for other village adventures awaiting your discovery. Ahead lies craftsmen's bustling markets, shrines filled with mysterious rituals, and the lively antics of fishermen challenging Nile predators. But for now, the fields linger warmly in your memory, a vivid reminder of ancient life's harmony with nature. Each golden stalk whispers stories of perseverance, patience, and quiet gratitude toward a river that both nourished and challenged generations of villagers. And as the sun climbs higher, you glance skyward again, sensing that today's scorching heat will soon test villagers' ingenuity. Egyptian afternoons required clever solutions, shade-seeking naps, strategic cooling techniques, and perhaps an extra dose of crocodile dung sunscreen. But that's for later. For now, you linger in the morning's gentle warmth, fields whispering goodbye as you wander onward, carrying their quiet wisdom into your next steps. Leaving the fields behind, you wander back toward the riverbank, lured by the gentle lapping of Nile waters and the rhythmic chanting of fishermen hauling their boats into the current. By now, the sun climbs steadily, illuminating waters so serene they appear harmless, though ancient villagers knew better than to trust appearances completely. Beneath that calm surface lurked Nile crocodiles, stealthy predators whose toothy grins hid intentions far less friendly than their permanent smiles suggested. At the river's edge, a group of fishermen expertly prepares their nets, their laughter mingling comfortably with the sounds of splashing water. They wave you over warmly, as if you've long been part of their daily routine, inviting you aboard a slender reed boat. It feels surprisingly stable beneath your feet, proof that ancient Egyptian boat builders understood balance as intimately as today's paddleboarders. Minus the modern obsession with selfies, of course. You set off gently across the Nile, its waters rippling quietly, soothing your senses. Fishermen paddle skillfully, effortlessly navigating currents, while discussing fishing strategies, gossiping cheerfully about village news, and occasionally debating Nile mysteries. They gesture towards spots reputedly favoured by elusive fish species, though exactly how reliable such village intel might be remains debatable. Fishermen, it seems, have always loved boasting about the one that got away. You watch carefully as they cast nets expertly into the water, their movements practiced, graceful, almost like dancers rehearsing a familiar routine. The nets unfurl elegantly, settling gently onto the water's surface before sinking below, invisible yet promising. Villagers then tug ropes rhythmically, their chants keeping pace, offering prayers to Hapi, the Nile god, hoping he might send fish swimming obligingly into nets. You quietly wonder if ancient Egyptian fishermen believed divine intervention improved their odds, or if prayer simply made hours of waiting more bearable. As nets return dripping from beneath the surface, villagers eagerly inspect catches, mostly silvery tilapia, small perch, and an occasional large Nile catfish, wriggling defiantly. They cheerfully debate each catch's merits, discussing recipes, freshness, and trading friendly accusations of luck versus skill. Watching their interactions, you realise fishing here isn't just about sustenance, it's communal bonding, friendly competition, and storytelling rolled seamlessly together. Yet occasionally, tension flickers through the air. A villager suddenly freezes, eyes locked nervously onto something dark gliding stealthily beneath the surface, an unmistakable crocodile silhouette. Conversations fall silent, everyone holding breaths as they watch closely, relieved only when the predator drifts lazily away. Fishermen here respect crocodiles deeply, understanding their power, yet pragmatically accepting their shared existence point. You shiver slightly. Grateful modern fishing typically excludes prehistoric predators lurking nearby. You overhear fishermen exchanging stories, some verging comfortably on folklore. One mentions a legendary Nile crocodile known as Old Grin, allegedly large enough to swallow boats whole. Another chuckles dismissively, insisting the creature is mythological, a fisherman's tall tale meant to impress listeners. Historians still argue whether such exaggerated crocodile legends served primarily as cautionary tales or merely entertainment during tedious hours awaiting bites. Regardless, villagers clearly enjoyed spinning these colourful yarns, even if the truth occasionally stretched beyond plausibility. As midday approaches, villagers guide boats toward shaded shallows, wisely avoiding oppressive heat until afternoon breezes return. Sitting comfortably beneath towering palms, fishermen spread nets for repair, their fingers deftly mending tears inflicted by stubborn fish or underwater obstacles. You quietly admire their meticulous patience, imagining modern anglers cursing furiously at tangled fishing lines, envying ancient Egyptians' practiced calm. A villager offers you freshly caught fish grilled gently over embers. Its flaky texture and subtle smokiness instantly win your approval, reinforcing appreciation for Egyptian culinary simplicity. Eating by the riverside, you listen as villagers trade fishing wisdom passed through generations. Tips about seasonal fish migrations, methods for spotting hidden predators, and gentle teasing about superstition versus practicality. Fishermen, apparently, have always balanced skill with playful skepticism about luck's role in their success. Nearby, a curious pile of dried herbs and twigs catches your attention. Intrigued, you ask about their purpose. Villagers smile knowingly, explaining it's an herbal mixture burned as incense to keep evil spirits away, particularly while fishing near murky waters rumoured to conceal danger. Practicality and superstition blend seamlessly here. Even skeptical villagers rarely decline extra protection, just in case. You privately decide if Nile crocodiles represent evil spirits, you'd willingly burn incense non-stop. A sudden splash nearby startles you, though villagers remain unfazed, identifying it calmly as merely playful hippos cavorting further upstream. Hippos, you learn, caused ancient Egyptians significant concern. Despite their amusing appearance, these enormous creatures posed genuine danger if approached recklessly. Villagers respected them cautiously, granting wide berth while enjoying their entertaining antics safely from afar. You decide ancient wildlife documentaries would have been spectacular, though filming hippos without becoming their snack would have proved challenging. Relaxing beside villagers, you savour gentle conversations drifting easily from family stories to fishing debates. You hear cheerful banter about tomorrow's catch, potential optimistic predictions about flood levels, and friendly teasing aimed at villagers who, legend has it, once fell hilariously from boats attempting ambitious fish retrievals. Ancient fishermen, it seems, were no strangers to aquatic mishaps and good-natured embarrassment. The breeze shifts gently, bringing welcome relief from the intensifying midday heat. Villagers lean back comfortably, eyes half closing, as conversations lull softly, briefly pausing for restful silence, punctuated only by rustling palm fronds and distant bird calls. Peaceful moments like these, you realise, connected villagers deeply, not merely to each other, but to their surroundings, honouring both Nile blessings and challenges equally. Eventually, villagers rise slowly, stretching limbs stiffened by morning labour. Nets repaired, fish stored carefully, stories shared thoroughly. It's time to return ashore, for well-deserved rest, until afternoon chores begin anew. You follow leisurely behind, savouring this glimpse into fishermen's daily rhythms, appreciating their resilience amid uncertainties beneath Nile waters. Ahead await lively markets, bustling with village craftspeople, fascinating rituals inside humble temples, and clever strategies villagers employ to survive scorching Egyptian afternoons. But for now, your thoughts linger riverside, fish splashing gently, villagers' laughter echoing faintly, and quiet gratitude toward crocodiles, who kindly remain distant, at least for today. Leaving behind the restful riverside chatter, you wander gently toward the village's bustling heart, the lively, energetic market, known fondly as Craftsman's Alley. Here the air fills with the gentle hum of daily commerce, buzzing lightly, with conversation, laughter, and the occasional friendly disagreement over prices. This ancient market isn't exactly Amazon Prime, but villagers seem perfectly content without next-day delivery, especially since everything needed for daily life waits just steps away, handcrafted by neighbours rather than distant factories. As you step into the marketplace, your senses awaken instantly, overwhelmed by a delightful medley of sights, sounds, and scents. Brightly coloured textiles drape invitingly from wooden racks, pots and baskets stacked neatly, and an abundance of fragrant herbs and spices perfume the air. The gentle rhythm of artisans at work provides soothing background noise, clinking of chisels against stone, rhythmic tapping of hammers, soft rustling of reeds woven patiently into baskets. Ancient Egyptians clearly understood sensory overload long before shopping malls invented it as a strategy. You drift toward a potter's stall, mesmerized by his skilled hands, shaping soft clay into elegant vessels. The potter works effortlessly, spinning clay swiftly on a simple wheel, fingers moulding it expertly until forms emerge gracefully beneath gentle pressure. Watching closely, you marvel at his seamless artistry, briefly imagining yourself attempting pottery, with predictable comedic results. He smiles warmly, seemingly accustomed to curious observers, perhaps secretly amused by how easy he makes something requiring such meticulous skill look. Nearby, women expertly weave reeds into sturdy baskets, their fingers nimble, movements swift yet graceful. Each basket takes shape steadily, revealing intricate patterns subtly embedded within. A few women chat lightly as they weave, trading news and gentle jokes about family dramas, reminding you that gossip thrives naturally anywhere humans gather. Baskets here serve countless purposes: storage, transport, laundry, or perhaps even as homes for village cats who casually assume everything belongs to them. Your eyes catch sight of vibrant fabrics displayed proudly by smiling merchants. Linens, expertly spun from flax harvested along the Nile, range from practical tunics and simple robes to intricately embroidered ceremonial garments. Egyptian clothing, you note, combined practicality with effortless elegance, designed for comfort amid scorching heat, yet stylish enough to satisfy even today's fashion influencers. You suspect villagers occasionally debated ancient trends, wondering whether particular shades or styles were genuinely flattering or merely fads best forgotten swiftly. Further along Craftsman's Alley, you find a sandal maker meticulously crafting footwear from papyrus reeds and softened leather. Sandals here aren't merely fashion statements. They're essentials protecting feet from scorching sands or sharp Nile debris. The artisan carefully fits sandals for villagers, adjusting straps expertly until each pair fits snugly yet comfortably. You wonder briefly how ancient Egyptians survived without sneakers or flip-flops, then realise their handmade sandals probably offered superior comfort. Minus unfortunate blisters, modern shoes often gift their wearers. At another stall, jewellers proudly showcase delicate adornments crafted from gold, turquoise, and semi-precious stones sourced locally or traded from distant regions. Each piece shines softly beneath sunlight. Craftsmanship, clear evidence of generations honing meticulous skills. Egyptians loved jewellery passionately, appreciating beauty not merely for aesthetics but as symbols of protection, status, or divine favour. You overhear villagers playfully debating certain designs, some favouring understated elegance, others drawn toward extravagance, and quietly appreciate how jewellery preferences remain eternally subjective. Not far off, a stone carver diligently chisels small sculptures depicting gods, animals, and stylized figures representing villagers themselves. His precise movements gradually transform raw stone into lifelike forms filled with personality. You pause, impressed by how convincingly he captures subtle emotions within cold stone, humour, wisdom, strength, all conveyed through careful carving alone. Historians still argue whether Egyptian sculptors deliberately embedded hidden symbolism into ordinary statues or simply enjoyed subtle artistic flourish. You decide. Both explanations probably hold truth, appreciating how art thrives equally through creativity and intentional mystery. Passing a stall filled with fragrant spices neatly arranged in clay jars, you inhale deeply, savouring cinnamon, cumin, coriander, and cloves mingling pleasantly. The spice merchant encourages tasting samples, promising culinary miracles await if you trust his spice blends. You smile, suspecting ancient Egyptians, like today's amateur cooks, occasionally relied heavily on spices to rescue meals gone astray. Cooking mishaps, it seems, have always required creative intervention, preferably accompanied by fragrant herbs. Nearby, villagers exchange friendly banter as they barter goods, haggling cheerfully, pretending exaggerated outrage over prices, yet smiling knowingly throughout negotiations. Ancient Egyptians viewed haggling as artful sport rather than tedious chore, part socializing, part playful contest, and entirely enjoyable for participants willing to embrace its humour. You quietly imagine modern supermarkets allowing customers playful negotiations at checkout, though perhaps that particular tradition should remain firmly ancient. Pausing again, you admire a papyrus vendor carefully demonstrating how plants harvested riverside transform magically into sturdy writing material. He patiently explains each step, layering papyrus stalks, meticulously pressing them until sheets emerge, durable enough to record everything from household accounts to poetic verses honouring Nile gods. Egyptians clearly understood papyrus's value long before paper became commonplace, respecting its practicality alongside symbolic connection to river cycles and village life. As afternoon heat grows intense, villagers retreat beneath shaded stalls, sipping cool water or chatting leisurely, commerce slowing comfortably until cooler hours return. You join briefly, savouring restful moments amid ancient marketplace rhythms, quiet conversations blending comfortably with gentle laughter, artisans resting tired hands while sharing stories, neighbours exchanging friendly greetings easily. Craftsman's Alley, you realise, represents far more than mere commerce. It symbolises village community, creativity, and timeless human connection woven intimately together. Reluctantly rising from a comfortable shade, you sense further village mysteries await exploration, spiritual practices quietly unfolding inside temples, children discovering playful secrets along hidden paths, villagers cleverly coping beneath a relentless Egyptian sun. Yet Craftsman's Alley remains warmly etched within your memory, its gentle marketplace, rhythms soothing your soul long after departing. Artisans here taught you something profound, that life thrives richest through creative passion, shared purpose, and genuine human connections made lovingly by hand. Stepping quietly away from Craftsman's Alley, you meander down shaded pathways toward a quieter corner of the village, where tiny temples and shrines wait peacefully among gently rustling palms. Here, spiritual practices blend effortlessly into daily routines, proving that worship, superstition, and quirky rituals comfortably coexist alongside cooking, fishing, and laundry. Ancient Egyptians didn't simply reserve religious beliefs for special days. They invited their gods, goddesses, and guardian spirits warmly into everyday life, making divine interaction as casual as waving at neighbours across the street. As you approach a small shrine nestled beneath a cluster of trees, the scent of fragrant incense drifts gently toward you. Villagers pause briefly as they pass, offering whispered prayers, leaving tiny gifts, flowers, fruits, or small carved tokens as signs of respect or petitions for favour. Here, village shrines rarely demand grandeur. Humble offerings suffice, reinforcing Egyptians' belief that sincerity mattered more than extravagance. You privately wonder if today's deities ever feel slighted when worshippers skip elaborate ceremonies, opting instead for simpler gestures. But perhaps divine beings appreciate heartfelt sincerity just as deeply. Inside the shrine, soft light filters warmly through woven reed walls. A priest carefully arranges offerings before small statues representing village gods: Bes, protector of households; Taweret, guardian of mothers; and Hapi, deity overseeing Nile fertility. He works quietly yet swiftly, clearly accustomed to daily routines that blend reverence with practicality. This priest, you realize, serves not merely as spiritual guide, but counselor, healer, and even occasional mediator during village disputes. Egyptian priests evidently wore many hats, though thankfully without overly complicated rituals involving ridiculous headwear. You watch closely as villagers approach the priest, quietly requesting blessings for family, healing for loved ones, or guidance regarding troubling dreams. The priest listens patiently, occasionally dispensing advice mingled subtly with humour, gently teasing villagers about overly imaginative nightmares, or reassuring them their household gods aren't annoyed by minor infractions, like forgetting offerings occasionally. Historians still argue whether ancient Egyptians genuinely believed gods directly influenced every aspect of life, or simply viewed spirituality as comforting ritual easing daily uncertainties. Observing interactions here, you sense truth lies somewhere between faith, pragmatism, and cheerful acceptance that divine mysteries simply defy easy explanations. Leaving the shrine, you drift slowly toward a shaded courtyard behind a modest temple. Here, villagers gather quietly beneath palm shade, waiting expectantly for a small religious ritual scheduled daily at noon. The ceremony soon begins, simple yet fascinating. The priest chants softly, sprinkling Nile water carefully from a small vessel, symbolizing renewal, purity, and divine favour. Villagers receive droplets gratefully, murmuring quiet prayers and gently smiling, finding comfort in rituals connecting them intimately with river cycles and cosmic rhythms. Nearby, a small group huddles around another priest, carefully interpreting omens from scattered sticks and stones. He scrutinizes patterns thoughtfully, offering villagers cryptic yet intriguing predictions about harvest prospects, Nile floods, or upcoming events, advice typically ambiguous enough to accommodate multiple outcomes. You privately suspect ancient fortune-telling required exceptional diplomatic skill, ensuring predictions appeared insightful regardless of actual events. Perhaps Egyptian priests invented vagueness as an essential art form, guaranteeing success through ambiguity alone. Further along the temple's edge, a curious stall catches your eye. A village elder carefully dispenses tiny amulets and charms promising protection, luck, or fertility. Some items, small carved scarabs, eyes of Horus, or symbols representing protective gods, make intuitive sense Others, however, surprise you considerably. One charm apparently protects specifically against aggressive geese, evidently a genuine ancient concern, and another promises improved laundry results, surely useful given muddy Nile waters, but decidedly quirky. Villagers seem genuinely enthusiastic, though you notice occasional suppressed giggles suggesting they share your skepticism about charm's effectiveness against particularly determined waterfowl. Stepping quietly around the temple's corner, you discover villagers performing an amusingly peculiar ritual involving small clay figurines symbolizing negative qualities or misfortunes. Carefully inscribed with unwanted attributes, illness, jealousy, bad luck, the figurines are ceremoniously broken, symbolizing rejection of negativity. Observing closely, you suppress laughter as villagers enthusiastically smash figurines, expressions ranging from solemn reverence to barely contained amusement. Clearly, ancient Egyptians appreciated symbolic catharsis alongside playful destruction, though you privately question whether smashing figurines genuinely banishes problems or merely provides satisfying stress relief. As you linger nearby, the temple priest notices your curiosity and warmly explains these rituals, often symbolic rather than literal, help villagers cope emotionally with life's uncertainties. He chuckles softly, suggesting humans always seek creative solutions, even when practicality remains questionable. Ancient Egyptians, it seems, embrace spirituality equally through sincere belief, gentle humour, and occasional eccentricity, blending faith seamlessly into life's ordinary moments. Returning briefly to the temple interior, you pause respectfully before larger statues of major gods, Osiris, Isis, Ra, whose significance extends beyond village concerns toward cosmic order and universal balance. Despite humble surroundings, these statues radiate quiet dignity, reminding worshippers their village lives connect intimately with greater cosmic mysteries. Villagers approach reverently, whispering quiet thanks or seeking reassurance amid life's uncertainties. Observing closely, you appreciate how gently, yet profoundly, spirituality anchors daily rhythms, providing villagers comfort, community, and deeper connection to worlds beyond immediate senses. Slowly, villagers drift away, rituals concluding gently beneath rising midday heat. Priests retire momentarily, sipping water, relaxing briefly beneath shade before afternoon chores resume. You linger, savouring peaceful temple ambience, appreciating how seamlessly ancient Egyptians balanced spirituality with ordinary existence, understanding worship as meaningful precisely because integrated gently yet profoundly into daily routines. Ahead await further village explorations, children discovering playful secrets hidden riverside, clever strategies villagers employ against oppressive heat, joyful celebrations punctuated humorously by awkward dance moves. But temple rituals remain vividly etched within your memory, teaching subtle wisdom ancient Egyptians mastered effortlessly, that life thrives richest when sacred and ordinary intertwine gently, creating rituals both meaningful yet delightfully quirky. Stepping quietly away, you carry temple lessons gently onward, remembering spirituality thrives best when mingled warmly with life's playful, unpredictable rhythms, inviting divine mysteries affectionately into ordinary existence. Stepping away from the temple quietude, you follow faint echoes of laughter, drifting from somewhere near the river's shaded banks. Here, village children roam freely, turning ordinary paths into endless adventures, and every cluster of papyrus reeds into hidden fortresses. Egyptian kids, like children everywhere, seemed naturally gifted at transforming boredom into creative mischief, proving once again that imagination remains humanity's most timeless superpower. You spot a small group huddled beneath the cooling shade of a palm grove, busily plotting something involving hushed whispers and suspicious giggles. Intrigued, you approach quietly, soon realizing you've stumbled upon an ancient game resembling hide and seek, though perhaps with rules slightly more fluid than you recall. The seeker, a girl with laughter sparkling mischievously in her eyes, dramatically counts loudly, occasionally peeking through fingers, giggling uncontrollably, while others scramble wildly for concealment. Children dart swiftly, ducking expertly into reeds, beneath overturned boats, or inside empty pottery vessels, proving conclusively ancient Egyptians embraced resourceful hiding strategies. You suppress laughter, imagining startled parents discovering children squeezed impossibly into storage jars meant solely for grain or oil, demanding immediate explanations about mysteriously missing lids. Clearly, children stretching parental patience remains timeless comedy gold. You follow quietly as children scatter deeper riverside, discovering secret places village adults rarely venture. Behind dense papyrus growth lies a hidden clearing, a perfect secret headquarters, complete with logs arranged neatly as seating. Here, children hold serious council sessions, discussing plans that occasionally border on absurdity, like capturing crocodiles or recruiting monkeys as secret allies. You privately suspect their ambitious schemes rarely proceed beyond enthusiastic brainstorming, but watching them passionately debate improbable ideas reminds you childhood optimism always fuels life's boldest adventures. Nearby, another group practices a competitive yet friendly game involving carefully tossed pebbles, skillfully aiming for distant targets drawn neatly in sand. Players concentrate intensely, occasionally disputing results heatedly yet humorously, accusing opponents of questionable techniques or unfairly favourable breezes. You chuckle, reminded that competitive debates over fairness remain fundamental to childhood play, ancient Egyptians clearly inventing playground justice long before referees became standard. One boy stands proudly beside a reed-crafted boat, demonstrating enthusiastically how swiftly it glides across shallow waters. Others eagerly imitate his design, each crafting miniature vessels, carefully testing buoyancy, speed, and navigational reliability, though occasional capsizing results in hysterical laughter rather than genuine frustration. Watching closely, you sense these playful experiments subtly teach practical Nile skills, navigation, boat building, and hydrodynamics disguised cleverly as entertainment. Historians still argue whether ancient Egyptians deliberately structured children's games to impart useful skills, or if learning occurred accidentally through playful exploration. Observing these spontaneous riverside adventures, you suspect playful ingenuity often reveals life's deepest truths effortlessly. Pausing beside gentle reeds, you notice several children carefully constructing tiny homes from dried mud, reeds and stones, miniature replicas resembling village dwellings you explored earlier. Each child painstakingly arranges small stones for walls, reeds for roofs, even tiny clay furnishings placed carefully inside. You privately marvel at their meticulous patience, imagining modern children expressing disbelief at building homes without plastic blocks or video tutorials. Clearly, ancient Egyptians invented hands-on creativity millennia before toy stores standardized play. Not far away, you spot a group excitedly gathered around a curious wooden contraption, resembling a simplified spinning top. The children take turns spinning it vigorously, cheering enthusiastically as it dances wildly across sandy ground, occasionally toppling dramatically amid triumphant laughter. Nearby, another child carefully sculpts small clay figurines, animals, village gods, or amusing caricatures of family members, revealing ancient Egyptians appreciated humorously exaggerated portraits even during playtime. Watching closely, you privately wonder if certain humorous sculptures risked mild parental scolding, or if ancient parents quietly appreciated playful irreverence toward authority figures. Strolling slowly along the riverbank, you overhear animated conversations among older children, sharing intriguing legends and thrilling stories passed down generations. Tales range from mythological gods performing extraordinary feats, legendary village heroes triumphing dramatically, or cautionary fables about greedy fishermen receiving humorous yet karmic punishments. Ancient storytelling clearly thrived riverside, children naturally drawn toward narratives filled with adventure, humour, and gentle moral lessons, proving timeless truths, always embed easily within imaginative stories, capturing youthful attention. A sudden shout draws your attention toward children clustered excitedly around something discovered beneath shallow river waters. Approaching curiously, you realise they've unearthed discarded pottery shards, mysteriously marked stones, even small jewellery fragments, fascinating discoveries inspiring excited speculation about origins, purposes, and possible magical properties. Children enthusiastically debate explanations, some practical, others wildly imaginative. Demonstrating ancient curiosity thrives naturally when confronted with intriguing unknowns. You privately suspect archaeological enthusiasm originated precisely here, childhood discoveries sparking lifelong fascination with past mysteries. Gradually, riverside shadows lengthen gently, signalling approaching afternoon heat, requiring clever strategies for coping beneath oppressive sun. Children pause briefly, considering next playful activities involving shaded hideouts, cooling river dips, or relaxed storytelling beneath protective palms. Yet playful energy rarely diminishes completely. Childhood imagination always discovering creative solutions, transforming potential boredom into delightful adventures, proving conclusively ancient Egyptians understood imaginative play remains essential life ingredient. Smiling warmly, you linger briefly riverside, savouring playful memories etched vividly within your thoughts. Watching children laughing joyously, creatively exploring, enthusiastically imagining possibilities stretching comfortably beyond practical boundaries, you appreciate profoundly how timeless childhood adventures remain. Imagination effortlessly bridging ancient past to vibrant present. Ahead lie further village explorations, quirky medical remedies employed by village healers, clever tactics villagers utilize surviving scorching afternoons, lively feasts punctuated humorously by endless food debates. Yet playful riverside adventures remain warmly etched within your memory, reminding gently how childhood imagination remains humanity's greatest timeless treasure. Stepping quietly onward, you carry riverside lessons warmly within. Remembering imagination flourishes best when given gentle freedom, playfully transforming life's simplest moments into adventures endlessly delightful, creatively boundless, warmly human. You leave the laughter of children behind and follow the narrow path toward a quieter corner of the village, one that smells faintly of herbs, dried flowers, and something you can only describe as questionable. Here lies the domain of the village healers, part herbalist, part magician, part therapist, and, if we're being honest, part entertainer. These resourceful figures occupy a curious space between medicine and mystery, between practical treatment and, well, let's call it creative experimentation. You duck into a shaded hut filled with low light and long shadows. Dried bundles of herbs hang from the ceiling, swaying gently in the warm breeze. Wicker baskets brim with dried roots, powders, and tiny vials, each labelled with careful symbols and bound with reed. You sneeze, not because of illness, but because there is absolutely something in the air here, and it has zero interest in sparing your nostrils. The village healer welcomes you with a grin that's equal parts wisdom and mischief. She's older, her skin sun-warmed, and her eyes sharp, glittering beneath a linen head wrap. Without hesitation, She presses a warm hand to your forehead. You're not sick, but she seems unconvinced. Apparently, looking a little dry around the edges is diagnosis enough. You watch as she begins preparing a remedy, grinding fennel, cumin, and garlic into a thick, dark paste, while muttering something under her breath. Maybe a blessing, maybe a recipe, maybe both. Ancient Egyptian healers often blended natural remedies with spells and incantations. Historians still argue whether the magic was the medicine, or the medicine was just a convenient vehicle for the magic. Either way, you're not about to question a woman wielding a pestle like it's both a cooking tool and a spiritual weapon. She offers you a taste of a fig-coloured concoction. You hesitate. It smells faintly like mud and ambition. But when in Egypt, you take a small sip. It's bitter. Your face says it all. She cackles with delight. Good for the stomach, bad for your taste buds, she jokes. You believe her on both counts. Around the room, younger apprentices prepare poultices and wrap linen bandages around carefully carved wooden splints. One girl is mixing a salve for sunburns, apparently made from honey, aloe, and yes, more crocodile dung. You sigh. Of course it makes a return appearance. Crocodile dung. Ancient Egypt's answer to everything from birth control to mosquito repellent. You're beginning to think it was their version of duct tape. In one corner sits a tightly sealed jar filled with something suspiciously slimy and pulsing faintly. You stare at it too long, and it stares back. Leeches, the healer says. They balance the blood. You nod slowly, deciding leeches probably deserve a separate Yelp review entirely. She leads you outside where a patient sits quietly in the shade, a young man with a snake bite. Not fatal, she assures you, unless it was a particularly moody snake. She applies a paste of garlic, beer, and crushed scorpion tail. You raise an eyebrow. She shrugs. Can't hurt, she says. That's not reassuring. But as she works, you notice her confidence, her calm, the trust the villagers place in her. She's not guessing. She's drawing on generations of knowledge, passed down like sacred recipes, each tested by experience and faith. You wander further to a place villagers call the Dream Hut. It's quieter here, thick with incense. Villagers who can't sleep or suffer from bad thoughts come here to be soothed. Inside, another healer hums softly, tracing protective symbols onto the floor. She mixes crushed blue lotus petals with wine, a mild sedative, they say, and also a way to visit the gods in dreams. The aroma is calming, floral with a hint of something illicit. You sit quietly, letting the scent wash over you. You won't fall asleep here, not tonight, but you understand why others might. Beside her sits a scroll, delicately unrolled and filled with cures for ailments, both real and imagined. For cough, honey boiled with sycamore bark. For a broken heart, lotus, music and moonlight. You smile. Whether these treatments actually work doesn't seem to matter as much as the intention behind them. Healing here is layered. Physical, emotional, spiritual. A song and a salve go hand in hand. Frankly, modern medicine could learn a thing or two about bedside manner. Outside, villagers gather under shade, trading health advice like recipes, ginger tea for sore throats, burnt frankincense for bad dreams, hippo fat for, well, actually no one's sure what hippo fat is for, but it's definitely in someone's remedy. You hear a spirited debate about whether one should sleep with a clay frog under their bed to ward off fever. Opinions are divided. Frogs, you note, are taking a lot of spiritual responsibility in this village, and just as you're about to leave, you hear a woman whisper to another, "Don't forget to touch the amulet 3 times before the moon rises." What happens if you do it after the moon rises? She won't say. She just looks up dramatically and mutters, "Let's hope you never find out." You smile. This village's approach to health is more than a blend of herbs and rituals. It's a philosophy. Illness is treated not just in the body, but in the community, the soul, and sometimes in laughter. Healing here is personal, intricate, and yes, occasionally a little weird. But in a world where crocodiles roam freely and the Nile decides when and where you can plant your barley, a few charms and whispered blessings feel like wise precautions. Ahead, animals stir in the afternoon heat, playing their own roles in this bustling, interconnected life. There's more to see. Goats with attitudes, cats with ego complexes, monkeys playing tricks on the unsuspecting. But you'll carry with you this new appreciation that healing isn't just about fixing. It's about believing, connecting, and finding hope in honey and herbs and the occasional frog under your bed. You follow the narrow path that leads past the healer's hut and into a lively tangle of sound and motion. Bleats, barks, caws, and the occasional snort of something suspiciously disgruntled. Welcome to the unofficial chaos zone of the village, the animals' quarter. Here, every creature has a purpose, a personality, and in some cases, a reputation. The first to greet you is a wide-eyed goat with the emotional subtlety of a toddler and the confidence of a military general. He stares you down, head tilted slightly, as if deciding whether you're friend, foe, or snack. Villagers pass by without a glance. Apparently, Nebu is well known for his attitude and occasional attempts to eat things that absolutely aren't food, including once the hem of a priest's ceremonial linen. That story still makes the rounds, growing a little funnier with each retelling. Wandering further in, you find a group of donkeys tied loosely under a palm awning. They're the village workhorses, literally. These sturdy, patient animals haul water, firewood, grain, and occasionally overly ambitious toddlers trying to sneak joyrides. One donkey, with a patchy grey coat and one especially judgmental eye, seems particularly unimpressed by everything and everyone. You try to pet him. He moves exactly 1 inch away. It's clear where you stand. Then come the cats. Oh, the cats, they're everywhere, perched on rooftops, lounging on sun-baked steps, winding confidently between your legs. One leaps onto a nearby barrel and stares at you with the calm superiority of a creature that knows it's been worshipped. And that's not a metaphor. Ancient Egyptians truly revered cats, not just for pest control, though they certainly earned their keep chasing mice from grain stores. Cats symbolized protection, grace, and the divine. Bastet, the feline-headed goddess, was beloved, and harming a cat could carry serious legal consequences. In fact, you overhear a heated argument nearby. 2 villagers accusing each other of encouraging a particularly chubby tabby to defect from one household to another. The cat, for his part, lounges in the sun, completely uninterested in the social fallout of his double life. Historians still argue whether cats were trained at all or simply tolerated the illusion of ownership for the sake of food. Based on current evidence, you'd wager on the latter. Not far from the village square, you encounter a small pen of geese. You smile. They seem harmless enough until they don't. One of them makes eye contact and hisses with the ferocity of a small dragon. The others follow suit, honking like outraged trumpet players. A child casually tosses them grain and warns you, with genuine concern, don't wear red. They hate red. No one knows why, they just do. Egyptian geese, it turns out, are deeply opinionated. You notice monkeys next, darting along rooftops and stealing leftover scraps from unattended baskets. One boldly dangles from a tree, chewing on what appears to be a date and tossing half the pit at a clay pot. He misses, spectacularly. His friend chitters mockingly. You half expect them to start a juggling act. Monkeys weren't native to all of Egypt, but were sometimes kept as exotic pets, especially near trade towns. This village, though, has adopted a group of troublemakers that treat it like a playground, with free snacks. A little girl trails behind you, proudly cradling a duckling. His name is Sobek Jr., she says, beaming. You raise an eyebrow, remembering that Sobek is the crocodile-headed god of strength and protection. It's an ambitious name for a duckling. She nods sagely. He bites. You believe her. And of course you can't think of Sobek without thinking of the real thing. Down by the river, villagers occasionally spot crocodiles sunbathing on distant banks, watching with eyes like chipped obsidian. They are not pets. They are not to be named, unless you count Old Grin, the village's favourite myth. Yet their presence is oddly respected, an ancient reminder that nature's balance is delicate, and sometimes your neighbour is a 15-foot lizard who swims faster than you run. You follow a boy toward the granary, where pigeons flutter and coo in the rafters. They're not just decorative, they're messengers, alarms, sometimes even dinner. Villagers build small towers to encourage nesting. Children climb to collect eggs, carefully carrying them in palm leaf baskets. One boy accidentally drops his, earning both a scolding and a second chance, which is all part of the system. Eggs, after all, are a fragile kind of wealth. There are dogs too, scruffy, friendly companions who serve both as guard animals and impromptu garbage disposal units. One trots beside you for a while, tail wagging, tongue lolling, probably hoping you'll drop something edible. When you don't, he peels off toward a group of women preparing fish and stakes out the area like a security guard on lunch duty. You're told some dogs are even trained to bark at unusual shadows along the riverbank. Whether that includes ghosts, hippos, or just overly tall reeds, no one's sure, but they take it seriously. The animal life here isn't an accessory to village existence. It's deeply intertwined. Every creature plays a role, whether as worker, pest controller, spiritual symbol, or in some cases, source of accidental comedy. And the villagers' relationships with their animals are personal. Goats are named, cats are adored, monkeys are tolerated, geese are feared. It's a complex little ecosystem that somehow runs smoother than you'd expect. As the sun begins to slant lower in the sky, casting long shadows over the pens and rooftops, the animals settle in for afternoon naps. Even Nebu the goat looks momentarily peaceful, chewing contentedly on something you're pretty sure used to be part of someone's sandal. You take one last look around at the creatures who work, play, protect, and provoke, and realise just how lively this little Nile-side menagerie truly is. Next, you'll walk back toward the river, where women gather in the shallows to wash clothes, swap stories, and share the latest village drama with the kind of whisper shouts that transcend language and time. But for now, you carry with you the joy of a village filled with living creatures, each with a role to play, a story to tell, and, sometimes, a grudge against red tunics. You follow the winding path back to the banks of the Nile, where the rhythm of village life slows into a gentle lull, and the air hangs thick with sunlight and steam. Here in the shallows, shaded by overhanging papyrus, a different kind of symphony plays out, not of music, but of soap bubbles, sloshing linen, and non-stop gossip. Welcome to the village's outdoor laundry lounge, equal parts wash station and social hub. Before you even spot the women, you hear them, laughing, talking over one another, gasping dramatically, and delivering hot takes with the flair of courtroom bards. Their voices rise and fall like waves against the riverbank, a familiar cadence that means stories are being told and secrets are being ever so gently leaked. As you approach, you see linen garments floating lazily in clay basins, slapped rhythmically against flat river stones. The women, knee-deep in water, scrub with methodical energy, their hands swift and strong, their mouths even faster. One woman points her elbow at another, giggling. She saw her neighbour's goat sneaking into the grain bins again and didn't say a word. The accused gasps, then shrugs. It's not my goat. I just admire his ambition. You try not to laugh too loudly, lest you draw attention, but it's nearly impossible not to smile. This is where information flows more freely than the Nile itself. Someone's cousin is getting married, someone else is suspiciously hoarding honey, and apparently One of the village cats has taken up exclusive residence at the shrine of Bastet, which clearly means she's angling for a promotion. A woman says with mock gravity, "Laundry here isn't just a chore, it's a social event. Every splash of water carries a whisper. Every rinsed robe comes with a raised eyebrow." You wonder, briefly, whether half of the village's alliances are forged here, and the other half quietly dismantled over discussions of soap and scandal. While some women scrub, others prepare soap, chunks made from natron and plant ash, fragrant with crushed herbs and occasional citrus rind. It smells earthy, crisp, and much better than you'd expect for something that was, at some point, part ashes. A young girl shyly offers you a small lump, nodding proudly. "Lemon blossom," she says. You accept it like a sacred offering. As the garments are scrubbed, they're laid carefully along sun-warmed rocks to dry. Soft linen flaps gently in the breeze, like a row of surrendered flags. Children help too. Some diligently, some clearly there for the entertainment. One boy has tied 4 loincloths into a makeshift cape and is currently staging a dramatic battle against invisible enemies. Another child sits on a rock beside her mother, humming while plucking loose threads from a worn tunic with surprising focus. A woman nearby recounts a dream she had, of Ra rising from the east with a falcon's cry and dropping a mango into her basket. She insists it's a sign of good fortune. Another listener disagrees. "Mangoes don't grow here. It's obviously about someone new arriving." "Or someone lying," the third offers, narrowing her eyes in exaggerated suspicion. And just like that, the conversation shifts into a spirited debate about who's lying to whom, about what, and whether dream mangoes are good or bad omens. Historians still argue whether dream interpretation was common in daily village life, or reserved for more elite circles. Judging by today's mango incident, we're leaning toward very common. Despite the jokes and gossip, there's care in every motion here. Linen is handled with practiced gentleness, embroidered robes rinsed multiple times, and frayed edges mended with quiet pride. These garments are heirlooms, daily tools, and ceremonial statements all rolled into one. And though ancient Egyptian fashion may seem simple from afar, lightweight tunics, plain robes, linen wraps, the subtle choices in colour, fringe, or fold say more than any outfit change ever did. The sun rises higher, and the women pause to rest beneath woven reed umbrellas staked firmly into the river mud. Cups of cool water are passed around, along with flatbread topped with fig spread and sesame. A small moment of peace overtakes the group, though one woman still leans toward another and whispers with dramatic flair, "He said he was going fishing." But who fishes without a net? The others groan and laugh knowingly. "Suspicious," one agrees. "Very suspicious." You glance over at the large basket of drying laundry, noticing something odd. A tunic hung out of reach, tied between 2 date palms like a hammock. "My son's idea of helping," a mother explains flatly, not even bothering to look up from her stitching. "He says it dries faster up there." You hear a distant "you're welcome" from somewhere high in the trees. Apparently, teenage logic transcends eras. There's a final rinse for the last batch of clothing, this one done carefully with perfumed water, a luxury saved for special occasions. Lavender and blue lotus bloom in the air as the garments are lifted, wrung gently, and spread out like silken sails. The river seems to respond, glistening beneath them, as if proud to be part of the ceremony. As the women begin to gather their things, the chatter softens. Baskets are packed, garments folded, the last bits of soap rinsed from calloused hands. Children are rounded up like wandering ducklings. You walk with them up the path, passing reeds swaying in rhythm with the river's current. One woman turns to you and says with a wink, "You didn't hear any of that, right?" Of course not. Next awaits the world of linen and jewellery, of sandals and style. Fashion, in ancient Egypt, wasn't just about covering up. It was a declaration, a daily form of expression, and, occasionally, a regrettable trend involving too much coal and not enough mirror time. But for now, you're still carrying the river's perfume on your skin and the echoes of whispered gossip that somehow felt as essential to the village as bread and water. You follow the now familiar dirt path away from the river's laundry circle, passing drying linens, fluttering lazily in the sun like sleepy butterflies. Soon the scent of soap fades, replaced by warm dust, faint traces of perfume, and the distinct whiff of someone experimenting boldly, maybe too boldly, with natron and cedar oil. Welcome to the village's informal runway, the world of ancient Egyptian fashion. To say villagers here are stylish is like saying the sun is a little warm. Egyptians, yes, even those in modest Nile-side homes, had opinions about how they looked, and it shows. You pass women adorned with beaded collars that catch the light like rainbows trapped in clay, and men with carefully pleated kilts that fall in crisp folds sharper than your last haircut. Even the children wear mini versions of their parents' outfits, proof that elegance was expected from the cradle. The main material here is linen. Light, breathable, and hand-spun from flax grown just steps from their own front doors. You run your fingers along a bolt of it, stretched across a reed frame, marvelling at how soft and sheer it feels. One villager grins and flaps a sheer tunic in your direction, like a magician about to disappear. Cool in summer, she says, and if it's too revealing, you just stand behind a cow. Works every time. Fashion here isn't static. Each piece, whether a simple wrap or a more formal garment, tells a story. Social class, mood, even political alliances if you're fancy enough. For everyday wear, most villagers stick to basics. Kilts for men, sleeveless sheath dresses for women, tied at the shoulders with cord or bone toggles. But there's always room for flair. A coloured sash here, a dyed fringe there, a surprise pop of turquoise beadwork for no reason, except that it feels right. You pause by a group gathered under an awning. They're trading accessories, necklaces, bracelets, rings. A woman offers a string of faience beads, polished to a dull shine, that glows blue-green in the sun. She slides it onto her friend's wrist and nods proudly. For health and beauty, she says, also for showing off at temple. Jewellery isn't just decoration here, it's insurance, charm, and personal flair rolled into one. That bronze bangle might ward off bad luck and remind your neighbours that you're doing just fine, thank you. Men wear collars too, broad, layered pieces that rest regally across the chest, often in patterns resembling the wings of Horus or the petals of lotus flowers. One teenage boy struts by, wearing an elaborate belt and far too much eye makeup. For festivals, he mutters, sensing judgment, then adds, mostly, you nod gravely. It's always festival season in the heart. And speaking of makeup, this is where the ancient Egyptians truly flex. The iconic kohl eyeliner? Oh yes, it's everywhere. Women, men, even children sport dramatic swoops of black or green, stretching from lash line to temple. It's stylish and practical, allegedly protecting against the sun and warding off evil spirits. Historians still argue whether the warding part was sincere belief or just a very convenient way to justify looking fierce. Either way, no one here is stepping out without their war paint. One woman leans into her hand mirror, polished copper not glass, and reapplies a line with a small wooden applicator dipped in crushed galena. Her daughter watches, mesmerised. When can I wear mine, she asks. When you can draw both eyes the same, her mother replies without looking up. Ancient beauty standards, it seems, required the same impossible precision we know today. Perfume is another village obsession. Blended from flowers, herbs, and animal fat, these oily concoctions are dabbed behind ears, smeared on collars, and occasionally offered as subtle hints during awkward conversations. You smell earthy, one woman tells her husband over breakfast. He applies more myrrh oil without missing a beat. Marital diplomacy at its finest. You wander toward a stall where sandals are being made by hand. Palm fibers are braided into soles, leather straps tied neatly across the top. These aren't your average flip-flops. They're durable, well-crafted, and designed for navigating both river mud and temple floors. Some even have ornamental toe loops, because comfort should never be an excuse for being unfashionable. Nearby, a few younger villagers are huddled over a clay tablet, sketching patterns and debating hem lengths. You lean in and catch a few phrases, too long for the flood season, too short for temple visits, and the ever-reliable, "My aunt wore that last year, and she tripped over a duck." Egyptian fashion, you learn, involves as much practicality as it does flair. Still, not every trend ages well. You hear someone mention the linen head cones, those mysterious scented wax cones depicted in art but never fully explained. Some believe they were worn during banquets to melt slowly and release perfume. Others say they were symbolic. The villagers? They laugh and say, "We tried it. It melted too fast, ruined my hair." You decide that fringe theory or not. No one wants molten wax dripping into their eyebrows. As the sun begins to dip, a group gathers for what can only be described as a sunset fashion stroll. It's not official, but it's happening. Robes are adjusted, sashes retied, amulets polished. Even the goat gets a flower tucked behind its ear. Everyone pretends they're just on an errand, but their postures say otherwise. You find yourself straightening your tunic. The pressure is real. You take a final look at the scene. Sun-kissed linen, brilliant beads, the flutter of dyed fringe in the breeze, and realise that fashion here is more than vanity. It's protection, communication, celebration. It's how you declare who you are without saying a word. And in a village where everyone knows your name, your scent, your sandal size, and your cousin's third husband's cousin's drama, your look matters. Tomorrow, you'll experience the brutal heat of an Egyptian afternoon and learn how villagers survive it with clever tricks, good humour, and occasionally a strategically placed palm leaf. But for now, you walk home in the golden light, trailing faint lotus perfume, faint dust, and just a little bit of envy for that kid's eyeliner wings, sharp enough to cut through time. The sun climbs to its zenith, glaring down like a judgmental older sibling who never approved of your fashion choices anyway. You step out into the blinding brilliance and instantly understand. This isn't just sunlight, it's Egyptian sunlight. And it doesn't gently nudge you awake. It smothers you in heat and dares you to carry on with your day, like it's not turning every surface into a frying pan. Welcome to the afternoon. You notice immediately that the village has quieted. The laughter from the children, the clatter from craftsmen's alley, even the gossip along the Nile has softened into a sort of strategic lull. Movement slows, voices lower, and even the animals seem to have developed a collective respect for staying put. A nearby donkey has wedged himself under the only patch of shade available, and is not budging for royalty or rain. Still, life doesn't exactly stop. It adapts. You find a group of villagers lounging inside a shaded courtyard, their backs against cool mud brick walls. Palm fronds rustle overhead, woven into makeshift awnings that cast dappled shadows like ancient air conditioning. One man fans himself lazily with a woven reed mat, each motion unhurried, almost meditative. "Move fast, sweat fast," he says, eyes barely open. "Move slow, survive." Sage advice, delivered with the energy of a baked potato. A woman next to him offers you a small cup of cool barley drink. It's thick, slightly sour, but surprisingly refreshing. This isn't some luxury beverage. It's an afternoon staple, mildly fermented, mildly filling, and fully capable of making the heat feel a little less oppressive. You sip slowly, letting it cool you from the inside out. Some villagers retreat indoors where thick mud brick walls keep rooms much cooler than you'd expect. You enter one, ducking slightly beneath a low lintel and immediately feel the difference. The air inside is at least 10 degrees cooler, proof that ancient architecture knew how to handle a desert without electricity or cross-ventilation apps. Inside, people nap on reed mats, or sit cross-legged threading beads, pounding herbs, or simply waiting out the sun like it's a guest who's overstayed its welcome. The best strategy, you quickly learn, is the afternoon pause, a cultural tradition, really, a communal agreement to acknowledge that between noon and about 3-ish, productivity is optional and shade is sacred. Historians still argue whether this period resembled a siesta or was merely practical necessity. Either way, no one here is in a rush. Even time seems to melt a little. You wander into the courtyard's corner, where someone has built a clever little contraption, clay pots stacked within each other, with wet sand in between. It's an ancient fridge. Seriously. Evaporative cooling keeps water and fruit chilled without ice or magic. One boy proudly pulls out a handful of cold grapes, like he's just opened a treasure chest. He offers you one with a grin. It's delicious, and you immediately regret every hot soda you've ever endured in your own life. Back outside, a group of older women are gathered near the edge of a wall, weaving palm leaves into small fans, baskets, and, much to your amusement, floppy shade hats. One tries hers on and laughs. If the gods can wear gold, I can wear leaves. She nods approvingly at her reflection in a polished copper mirror. You resist the urge to ask for one. Barely. Just down the path, you see children playing a slower, lazier version of tag. It's less about speed and more about stealth. Survival tag, one calls it, panting from what looks like 7 seconds of movement. Everyone agrees to tag only in the shade, which results in a hilariously awkward choreography of sneaking, freezing, and yelling. Wait! You stepped into the sun! You're out! Rules seem flexible. Sanity is not. You pass by a fig tree, where a family gathers beneath a tarp, snacking and playing a game involving pebbles and smooth boards marked with carved squares. It's not Senet, the better-known board game, but something simpler, probably invented here and spread by word of mouth. The players argue passionately about rules, teasing each other over illegal moves while nibbling on roasted chickpeas. The scent of mint drifts from somewhere nearby. You trace it to a clay bowl where leaves steep in warm water and herbal tea brewed not for heat but for digestion, hydration, and possibly magical side effects depending on who's telling the story. A nearby teen sprinkles powdered carob into her cup and shrugs. Keeps you cool, she says, or makes you burp. Either way, it's fun. Even in the heat, some villagers continue light chores. One man carefully mends a net in the shade, his hands methodically tying knots with practiced ease. Another woman sits with her back to the sun, braiding linen strips into rope, while singing softly. The song is slow, meandering, like the Nile itself, and echoes gently between the walls. You don't understand the words, but it feels like comfort, an audio breeze drifting through the heat. Nearby, someone is experimenting. You watch as he fills shallow clay bowls with water and sets them beside sun-warmed rocks. A few drops of essential oil, blue lotus maybe, send up a fragrant mist. It tricks your nose into thinking it's cooler, he explains, though whether that's science or placebo is up for debate. Either way, it smells like serenity. You take a seat under a fig tree, beside an old woman chewing on a stick of licorice root. She taps your shoulder with it and says, "You survive this, you can survive anything." You laugh. She doesn't. But then she offers you a bite. As the day begins to wane, you feel the mood of the village shift again. People start to stir a little more quickly. The breeze picks up slightly. The light softens, and birds begin to chirp again. The afternoon pause has passed. Slowly, gently, the village stretches, stands, and begins to move with purpose again. Dinner must be made, animals must be gathered, the business of life resumes. You rise too, brushing dust from your tunic. a little sweatier than you'd like, but far wiser about how to handle heat like this. Tomorrow you'll join a village feast, a joyful, noisy, delicious affair where food is shared, stories are swapped, and at least 3 people will argue over whose grandmother makes the best lentils. But for now, you've survived the Egyptian afternoon. No small feat. And let's be honest, you'd wear a palm leaf hat again in a heartbeat. The sun dips lower now, mellowing from harsh white to warm amber. Shadows stretch lazily across the ground like contented cats, and the village begins to wake from its collective afternoon trance. You follow the scent of something savoury and bubbling, drawn like a cartoon character drifting on a cloud of scent toward what promises to be one of the most beloved parts of the day, the community feast. You reach a wide open space at the village's edge where long reed mats are being laid out in concentric circles. Villagers appear from every direction, carrying bundles wrapped in linen, baskets, jars, steaming clay pots cradled in cloth. The excitement is low-key but unmistakable. This isn't a holiday, not a harvest festival, not a wedding. Just a regular evening. But regular in Egypt still means there's going to be good food and even better debates about it. You help unroll one of the mats, your hands brushing the textured fibres worn smooth by years of use. Children dart past you, giggling, each one assigned a task that they will almost certainly complete only halfway. A girl is supposed to be setting out drinking cups. She's stacking them into a pyramid. A boy has been sent to gather herbs. He returns with exactly 1 sprig of mint and a rock shaped vaguely like a fish. He's proud. You don't question it. Soon clay dishes are unveiled like treasures. Flatbread, of course, still warm from the hearth, slightly charred at the edges, and perfect for scooping up dips and stews. There's fuel medames, a savoury blend of fava beans, oil, garlic, and lemon, garnished with fresh herbs and a single strategic drizzle of oil that glistens like liquid sunlight. One woman places it down reverently and mutters, "Now it's a proper meal." You sit cross-legged as more dishes arrive. Stuffed grape leaves, baskets of dates, sliced cucumbers sprinkled with crushed salt stones, and slices of melon so sweet they practically sigh when bitten. At the centre is the showstopper, a roasted tilapia caught earlier in the day, laid out on a broad palm leaf, its crispy skin glistening and its aroma worthy of song. A teen sits beside you and grumbles, "It was my fish, my line." He just helped pull it in. You raise your eyebrows, but before you can respond, an older man from across the circle calls, "It was my bait." And just like that, the first food debate of the evening has begun. Food, you quickly learn, is never just food here. It's history, bragging rights, and subtle warfare. A plate of lentils sparks a heated discussion over whether they should be served plain or with onions. Someone else complains that last week's feast had barley bread with no coriander. And really, what's the point? Another counters that too much coriander is a punishment from the gods. You chuckle quietly, but the villagers are absolutely serious. Food is personal. It connects generations, defines families, and becomes legend. One woman insists her grandmother once cooked a stew so good that a passing crocodile stopped and just watched. No one knows what to say to that. They just nod solemnly, as if to honour both the grandmother and the culinary pause of the crocodile. And then there's beer. Yes, beer. Thick, yeasty, mildly alcoholic, and served in clay jugs that are passed around generously. It's less like modern lager and more like liquid bread with a personality. You take a sip. It's chewy, but oddly satisfying, especially after a full day under the Egyptian sun. A nearby elder pats your shoulder and says, "If it fills your stomach and clears your head, it's a good beer." You're not sure it clears anything, but it definitely fills your stomach. Children wander between groups, sharing bites, occasionally stealing more desirable items from unattended dishes. No one minds much. The feast is about abundance. And even if someone's bread gets snatched, there's always more where that came from. A heated discussion starts over a jar of pickled garlic. One woman claims her recipe wards off stomach curses. Another counters that it attracts romantic attention, not necessarily in the desired order. A third simply eats it, winks and says, "It's good either way." You decide that garlic diplomacy may be a lost art. You overhear whispers about a dish that didn't make it this time. Duck stew, supposedly banned from the feast after the incident. No one will say what the incident was, only that it involved feathers, fire, and someone trying to season with blue lotus instead of salt. You desperately want details, but no one's talking. The mystery deepens with every bite. The sun finally slips behind the horizon, and soft lamplight begins to glow. Clay oil lamps are lit and placed in small circles, casting flickering halos over everyone's faces. The mood shifts, voices soften, and the pace of eating slows. Full bellies stretch against linen tunics, and neighbours lean in closer to share stories instead of sauces. A quiet clapping begins. It's not rhythmic, just a few slow, satisfied claps from an elder who then stands and says, "Let this night be remembered for the bread, not the barley debate." Laughter erupts. He bows dramatically, then sits down and finishes the last date from his plate, like a victorious pharaoh. This man clearly understands how to close a meal. As people begin clearing the dishes, you help gather cups and shake crumbs from mats. Nothing is wasted. Leftovers are saved, bones fed to dogs, peelings tossed into compost heaps. Even scraps are given purpose, proving that sustainability isn't modern. It's ancient and second nature here. The feast winds down not with a bang, but a hum. Bellies are full, minds are calm, and hearts are warmed, not just by food, but by togetherness. You realise that in this village, nourishment is layered. It's in the bread, yes, but also in the laughter, the storytelling, the shared garlic feuds. It's in the rhythm of hands passing dishes, and the quiet moment of clinking jugs under a starlit sky. Tomorrow, you'll face the great flood, the rising Nile that transforms everything, with both chaos and renewal. But tonight, with soft firelight dancing over contented faces and the lingering taste of lentils on your tongue, you rest in the comfort of good food and better company. And maybe, just maybe, you'll dream about that duck stew incident. The next morning, you're awakened not by the sun, but by the sound of voices, sharp, hurried, purposeful. You rise quickly and peer outside, only to find the entire village humming like a hive. People are moving with a quiet urgency, bundling tools, herding animals, reinforcing walls. The air smells different too, heavier, humid, rich with the scent of fresh mud. The Nile is coming. This is not just any day. This is the beginning of flood season. You follow the movement toward the river's edge, where the villagers have gathered. The Nile, which just yesterday glided along lazily, now churns with new energy. Its banks bulge outward, already swallowing small reeds and stepping stones that yesterday felt safe and familiar. Everyone watches silently for a moment. The river is rising, slow but steady, like a patient god reclaiming its territory. Flood season, or Akhet, is both feared and revered. It's life and destruction in one breath. The villagers have spent the entire year preparing for this moment, and yet the exact timing and intensity always keep them guessing. Historians still argue whether the flood was seen primarily as a gift or a threat. You look around at the concerned yet focused faces and realise it's always both. An elder breaks the silence with a calm but commanding voice. Begin the bundling. And with that, everyone springs into action. You help where you can, carrying baskets of food to higher ground, helping lash together bundles of papyrus, stacking jars atop platforms inside homes. Everyone has a role, even the children, who run messages or collect loose animals. One girl is dragging a sheep that very clearly does not want to be dragged. Near the granary, you assist in sealing clay storage jars, daubing thick mud along lids to make them watertight. A boy beside you mutters, "Last year one wasn't sealed and we had fermented lentils by accident." He shudders. You pretend not to be curious about how that tasted. In the courtyard, sandbags are stacked where the walls meet the ground. Others dig small trenches to redirect overflow toward less important fields. It's all part of the plan. Egyptians didn't resist the Nile. They redirected it, danced with it, anticipated its every move like a familiar but temperamental partner. Even now, you can feel the tension between anxiety and awe. And yet, amid the activity, there's laughter. Two women rib a man for always waiting until the last minute to move his fishing gear. "It's not the flood," one says. "It's your laziness catching up with you." He shrugs, flashes a toothy grin, and lifts a dripping net with both pride and apology. "It's strategic," he says. "Now the fish come to me." You find moments of calm too. A grandmother sits on a high wall, calmly weaving reeds as the waters creep closer. You ask her if she's worried. She smiles, unfazed. "The Nile has been doing this longer than I've been breathing. It rises, it falls, we sweep the mud off the floor and keep living." By midday, the lower fields are submerged. Cows are mooing from their temporary enclosure on higher ground, looking vaguely insulted by the disruption. Chickens flutter nervously atop overturned baskets. A monkey perches on a roof beam with a confused expression, as if unsure whether to celebrate or file a formal complaint. Children stand in clusters, watching the water spread with fascinated eyes. One child points at a floating bundle of sticks and whispers, "It looks like it's chasing us." Another child declares it a sign from Hapi and immediately begins drawing protective symbols in the mud with a stick. When it comes to interpreting the Nile's whims, creativity is practically a survival skill. You follow a small group to the temple, where a simple but solemn ceremony begins. The priest stands barefoot on a small platform just above the waterline, offering a bowl of fruit, grain and flowers. He whispers a prayer to the god of the flood, asking for mercy, for balance, for prosperity. Villagers nod, eyes closed, some lips moving silently. The moment feels sacred, not stiff or theatrical, but human, honest. Then the priest opens his eyes and chuckles. "And maybe this year, a few fewer frogs in the granaries, yes?" Everyone laughs. Even the gods, it seems, can be petitioned for pest control. As the flood continues, the village adapts again. Canoes are untied and slid into the rising water. Small reed boats glide between buildings, ferrying supplies and passengers to and fro. It's chaotic, yes, but controlled. Like a ballet in slow motion, where no one has quite perfected the steps, but everyone's willing to improvise. That evening the mood shifts again. The danger has passed for now. Water has reached its peak and seems to be holding. No homes were lost. The food is safe. The people are safe. Tired, muddy and damp, but safe. A group gathers atop a slope that now overlooks what was once farmland. Someone produces a lyre, another brings a drum. Music begins to rise over the lapping waters, soft and steady. Children dance barefoot on the wet earth, giggling, slipping occasionally, but always getting up. The adults clap along, humming old flood songs, melodies passed down not through sheet music, but through generations of memory and repetition. You sit quietly at the edge of the group, the tune settling into your bones, the air smelling of damp grass and baked clay. The flood has come and will eventually recede, leaving behind rich black silt, the key to Egypt's agricultural magic. It's a cycle that defines everything. Life, death, rebirth, then another life again, and maybe another goat getting stuck in the temple. It happens more often than you'd think. Tomorrow the village will begin checking the fields, repairing, rebuilding, and rinsing off the Nile's generous, muddy fingerprints. But tonight, there's only music and relief. And one boy trying to paddle a laundry basket like a canoe, while his sister yells, "That's not how science works." You lean back, watching the stars flicker above the now expanded river. For all its unpredictability, the flood binds this village together, like no other event. It's the great equalizer, the yearly reminder that nature always has the final say, and that humans are at their best when they prepare together, adapt together, and sing, laugh, and dance together. The floodwaters have started their slow retreat, leaving behind slick mud and a village full of soggy footprints. But spirits completely undampened. Because tonight the villagers aren't thinking about mud, or rebuilding, or how many frogs have snuck into their homes. They're thinking about music, dance, and the thrill of shaking off tension with a little joyous noise. You wander into the gathering just as the sky turns that perfect Egyptian indigo. Oil lamps flicker like grounded stars, their golden glow shimmering on water jars and polished jewellery. The feast from earlier still lingers on the breeze, charred fish, sweet honey cakes, and that elusive barley beer that tastes like someone fermented ambition in a clay pot. But food isn't the main event tonight. Music is. A group of men and women are already tuning instruments, bent harps, flutes carved from reed, and small hand drums with taut leather stretched over wooden frames. One man plucks his strings, frowns, adjusts them, and plucks again. He looks up and grins. It's not out of tune, it's just dramatic, the first notes begin. Slow, rhythmic, hypnotic, and the crowd starts to sway, like fields of barley in a soft breeze. Children clap along enthusiastically, though not always on beat. You can't blame them. Rhythm, it seems, is learned over time. One little girl claps every third beat and looks personally offended when the music doesn't follow her lead. Then come the dancers, not professionals, not choreographed, just villagers, fathers and daughters, aunts and nephews, friends, rivals, and that one uncle who insists on doing the shoulder thing. They move in loose, fluid circles, arms swaying, feet stomping with rising energy. Linen tunics flutter, jewellery jingles, a few headbands fall off. No one minds. You watch as an older woman joins in, her back straight, movements elegant and assured. A space opens for her automatically. This is clearly her moment. Her hands flutter like papyrus leaves, her feet strike the earth with confidence, and everyone cheers as she spins once, twice, before bowing out with the poise of a queen. Then a boy jumps in, attempting the same spin, and immediately landing face first in the mud. Silence. Then an explosion of laughter. He springs up, grinning wide, and bows dramatically. The crowd roars its approval, clapping and stomping the beat even louder. He learned that from the goat, someone yells, and you're not sure if it's a joke or an origin story. Either way, it's a hit. You step into the edge of the dancing, unsure, but no one hesitates. A woman grabs your hand, pulls you in, and suddenly you're moving. Not well, but with enthusiasm, which in this village is more than enough. The steps are simple. Sway, stomp, twirl, repeat. The rhythm builds, sweat beads on foreheads, laughter rises, your feet slip. Someone catches you. You keep going. Historians still argue whether dance in ancient Egypt was formalized ritual or casual expression. Tonight, it's both. There are sacred movements, a hand lifted to the sky, a foot stamped to the earth, and there are silly ones. A man spins while holding a clay jar on his head. He lasts 5 full turns before the jar tumbles. Applause anyway. Style points matter. Someone breaks out the sistrum, a rattle-like instrument shaped like a horseshoe with tiny metal discs that jingle wildly when shaken. A young girl waves it like a wand, clearly enjoying the power of noise. She's going to be a priestess, her mother says proudly. Or a drummer. Either way, we'll hear her coming. You retreat for a moment, catching your breath near the fire pits. A group of elders sits nearby, tapping the beat on their knees, humming softly along. They're not dancing, but they're present, watching, remembering, maybe thinking of younger days when they too slipped in the mud and got cheered anyway. A soft ballad begins, lower tempo, wistful melody. Two dancers step into the centre. You recognise them. A married couple, probably in their 40s, moving in perfect harmony. Their fingers intertwine, eyes locked as they sway together in a slow, deliberate rhythm. The crowd hushes. Even the children stop to watch. It's not flashy. It's not dramatic, but it's beautiful. Each step tells a story of partnership, of seasons weathered, of arguments and laughter, and shared barley soup on quiet mornings. When the song ends, they bow slightly and step back into the circle as if nothing extraordinary just happened, but everyone knows it did. Soon the tempo picks up again. The dancers multiply. Someone lights a string of oil lamps into the shape of a spiral, and the dancers begin to follow it, creating a living current of joy. You can't help but join in again. Feet clumsy, heart light. You spin past the same boy who face-planted earlier. He's wearing a papyrus crown now, his grin still unmatched. As the night deepens, songs become rowdier, lyrics sillier. There's one about a goat who outwitted a merchant, another about a priest who forgot his lines during a blessing and blamed it on sleep deprivation. The village collectively sings these with gusto, and you quickly learn the chorus, if not the meaning. It doesn't matter. It's not about precision, it's about belonging. The stars overhead blink softly, like celestial audience members tapping along to the beat. The Nile glistens nearby, its waters calm once more, mirroring torchlight and echoing drum beats. You realise how moments like this are the true heartbeat of the village, not just surviving the floods or baking the bread, but dancing wildly in the aftermath, proving that joy has as much power as grain. At last, the music begins to slow. One by one, dancers bow out, laughing, exhausted, barefoot and muddy and glowing. Children collapse into their parents' arms. Elders stretch with exaggerated groans, and equally exaggerated pride. Someone hums the last few notes of a familiar lullaby. You find yourself still swaying slightly, long after the beat fades. Tomorrow will bring chores, routines, maybe another minor disaster involving ducks. But tonight belongs to rhythm, to laughter, to movement without perfection, to joy unfiltered. And that, you think, is something worth dancing about. The dawn after the dancing is sleepy, slow and scented faintly with ash and wood smoke. You rise with limbs pleasantly sore from last night's impromptu choreography, and as you step outside, you find the village waking gently. No rushing, no fanfare, just soft voices, quiet footsteps, and the rhythmic shuffle of people preparing for the final chores of the day. Evening will come soon, and with it, the familiar pattern of tidying up before darkness stretches its long fingers over the Nile. You follow the scent of baking bread and the sound of creaking carts toward a group of villagers gathering bundles of reeds, carrying baskets of harvested greens, and stacking jars now dried from earlier pot washing. There's a rhythm to it, unspoken and seamless. It's a dance of another kind. You join a woman carefully inspecting her clay oil lamps. She checks the wicks, trims them with a tiny flint blade, then tops off the oil with practiced ease. No one wants to trip into a goat at midnight, she says, straight-faced, though her eyes glint with mischief. You quickly learn that in this village, all things, chores included, come with a side of humour. Elsewhere, a man lifts a child to reach a hanging basket of dried figs. She snags one, then promptly stuffs it into her mouth and pretends innocence. He sighs, hands on hips, then grabs one for himself. Parenting. Then and now, same exact playbook. You pause by a house where someone is mending a fishing net, tying knots with rhythmic flicks of the wrist. The sun glints off his calloused hands. You sit for a moment, watching him work in silence. It's not boredom, it's peace. Evening chores in this village are not rushed or dreaded. They're steady, intentional, a chance to return everything to its rightful place before the stars come out to keep watch. Nearby, you help sweep a courtyard with a broom made from bundled palm fronds. Each swipe sends small puffs of dust swirling lazily in the late afternoon light. A small lizard darts across the floor, offended by the interruption. You both apologize silently to each other and move on. You smell lentils simmering again. Either it's a favourite around here or someone just really nailed their recipe. A pot is propped carefully against hot coals, watched over by a teenage boy who's clearly been told not to leave it unattended. He looks bored out of his mind. When asked how long it's been cooking, he says, "About 100 years." You nod sympathetically. Time does pass differently when you're on lentil duty. A little later, you join a group fetching water from a community jar near the shrine. The container is enormous, shaped like a bulb and buried halfway into the ground to keep it cool. A line of villagers takes turns ladling the water into smaller pots to carry home. One boy tries to show off by balancing his on his head. It ends predictably with a very wet tunic and applause from everyone watching. As the sun dips lower, families gather in quiet clusters to finish last tasks together. One mother braids her daughter's hair while also shelling chickpeas. Another sharpens tools using a flat stone, the sound soothing in its repetition. You overhear someone reciting a list of things to do tomorrow, punctuated by groans from whoever's been assigned to help move granary jars. It's the ancient version of "Can someone else cover my shift?" And then, as the final golden light of the sun glances off the Nile, a hush seems to fall over the village, not in silence, but in softness. A group gathers by the fire pit. The flames crackle gently, throwing shadows that dance up the walls. You find a spot among them, cross-legged on the ground, arms wrapped around your knees, and wait. The stories are coming. First, it's an older man, beard long and voice rich with gravity. He leans forward, clearing his throat, and begins. There once was a farmer who loved his fig tree more than his wife. Everyone laughs, groans, or claps. The storyteller raises an eyebrow and continues. The story meanders, filled with exaggerations, animals that talk, magical jars that overflow, and, inevitably, a goat that knows far too much. It ends with a lesson about balance, patience, and the value of keeping your best figs hidden during harvest season. The next story comes from a grandmother whose voice is barely above a whisper, but everyone leans in like it's thunder. Hers is a ghost story about the spirit of a crocodile that protects children who get too close to the river's edge. Her fingers flutter as she speaks, drawing shapes in the air, and a child beside her clutches their knees a little tighter. Historians still argue whether these fireside tales were purely for entertainment or served as oral archives of myth, lore, and memory. But here, listening to the crackle of fire and the occasional gasp of surprise, you know it's both. The stories are fun, yes, but they also carry fragments of belief, history, caution, and culture, passed down not in scrolls, but in smoke and voice. One boy asks to tell a story. His involves a heroic frog, a magical date palm, and a very confused priest. It's messy, loud, and utterly adored by everyone. "You've been listening," someone says proudly. "And making stuff up," says someone else. "That's how we learn," replies a third. You nod. Sounds about right. As the stars come out one by one above you, you notice the hush deepening. People lean into each other, faces warmed by both firelight and companionship. A dog curls beside your feet. Someone passes you a piece of dried fruit. You chew slowly, not just because it's chewy, but because you want the moment to last. And as the last ember fades, and villagers begin drifting home, yawning and full of both stories and starlight, you realise this exact moment is as sacred as anything that happens in temples. A daily ritual of winding down, of remembering, of speaking things out loud so they live on beyond the person who first said them. Tomorrow, love and marriage await, with all the awkward, hilarious and sweet complexity that comes with it. But tonight, you walk back toward your bed with stories ringing in your ears, your heart full of quiet, and the fire's glow still flickering gently behind your eyes. Morning arrives with a light breeze and the smell of baked dates, which honestly feels like the universe bribing you to get out of bed. You stretch, rub sleep from your eyes and step outside to find the village already humming with energy, but not the usual kind of workday rhythm. No, today there's extra brushing, extra straightening of tunics, and more than one person walking with the nervous stiffness of someone about to meet their in-laws. Today is a day for love. Well, mostly. It's also a day for parental negotiation, cousin whispering campaigns, awkward glances across courtyards, and one goat tied suspiciously close to the temple. Ancient Egyptian courtship, it turns out, was a dance all its own, sometimes poetic, sometimes political, often hilarious. You follow the sound of music, soft flutes this time, gentle and melodic, and arrive at a small gathering. A young woman sits beneath a fig tree, surrounded by female relatives who are braiding her hair, adjusting her jewellery, and issuing contradictory advice at high speed. Don't smile too much. Smile a little. Speak second, not first. Unless he's taller than expected, then speak first. The bride-to-be nods politely, clearly used to this tornado of wisdom. Across the path, the groom is getting a similar treatment from his family, although with fewer cosmetics and more slapping on the back. Don't forget to compliment her sandals, or her parents, or the goat if they bring one. You learn very quickly that flattery is an ancient art, and also that the goat thing is very real. In some households, gifting livestock is still a time-honoured way to say, "I would like your daughter's hand, and here's a small, loud, grass-consuming symbol of my commitment." The ceremony won't begin until the sun is high, so you walk the village to see what else courtship looks like here. You find two teenage girls giggling behind a palm tree, spying on a boy attempting to carry a large basket of pomegranates, while pretending not to notice them. He trips, they laugh, he blushes, a scene as ancient as it is familiar. In another courtyard, a woman sits with her daughter and a clay tablet, carefully tracing love poems passed down from generations. Egyptian poetry about romance is often beautiful, tender, sincere, and occasionally a little spicy. One of the lines reads, "My heart flutters at your voice. My eyes long to see your form, more than the taste of beer on a hot day." Now that is commitment. Nearby, a group of women sit weaving wedding garments, gossiping without even trying to be subtle. "I heard he was courting her sister first." "That's not what my cousin said." "Well, the goat's definitely for her, so he's made his choice." One woman swears she saw the bride smile at someone else last week during temple prayers. It's hard to say if this is important intel or just vintage drama, but either way, it's golden. You pass by an old man offering romantic advice to a group of young boys who look half curious and half terrified. First you make her laugh, then you offer her a date, not the fruit, an actual date. A walk, maybe a boat ride, but make it casual, don't bring your mother. All of this is met with wide eyes and nervous shuffling. Also, he adds, don't forget to wash your feet. Later, as the sun climbs and drums begin to beat softly in the distance, the wedding procession starts. The bride walks slowly through the village with her family, clad in a beautifully pleated linen dress, adorned with blue lotus blossoms, the scent of myrrh trailing behind her. Her jewellery gleams, a protective scarab, a string of turquoise beads, a copper pendant shaped like the eye of Horus. It's part love, part fashion, and part ancient insurance policy. The groom waits at the centre of the village gathering space, trying very hard to look calm while adjusting the same sash over and over. The goat, yes, the goat is tied nearby, decorated with a ribbon and chewing on a flower it wasn't supposed to eat. You suspect the goat knows exactly what it's doing. The ceremony is short, joyful, and full of blessings. The priest speaks of ma'at, balance and harmony, not just in nature, but in marriage. Two lives braided like linen threads, he says, stronger together, impossible to untangle without ruining the whole. It's oddly poetic and the villagers nod thoughtfully. Then comes the feast. Of course there's a feast. Bread, honey, figs, grilled fish, and something that may or may not have started as duck stew, but has since undergone a serious rebrand. There's music and dancing again, though this time it's more reserved, at least until one uncle brings out the sistrum and starts doing the shoulder thing again. He must be stopped. You spot the bride and groom later, sitting together quietly near the edge of the celebration. They're sharing a piece of pomegranate, whispering to each other, smiling in that soft, nervous, sweet way of people who are hopeful and new, and trying not to make fools of themselves in front of extended relatives. It's perfect. But marriage here isn't always that poetic. You've heard the other side too. The arranged matches, the dowry negotiations, the whispered debates about good families, and questionable bread-baking reputations. One older woman tells you, the wedding is sweet. The years after, that's where you learn your real songs. You nod, appreciating the wisdom. There's also divorce. Yes, ancient Egyptians could and did dissolve marriages, and while it wasn't always simple, it was accepted. Property divided, promises rewritten. Better a clean break, someone says, than a lifetime of burned lentils. You don't ask for details. You sense the story behind that line is very real. By sunset, the bride and groom retreat to their new home. A modest space prepared with fresh linens, fragrant oil, and symbolic offerings, bread, salt, a clay lamp, and a single pomegranate. Not bad for a starter kit. And the goat, it's been gifted to the bride's parents. You're told this is both symbolic and practical. It'll remind them he paid well, and if he didn't, they'll have stew. Ancient accountability, farm style. Tomorrow you'll look up at the stars and hear the villagers wonder about what lies beyond. Their hopes, myths, and stories written in the sky. But tonight is about love. Awkward, joyful, simple, and ancient. And somewhere that flower-eating goat is chewing smugly under the stars, knowing it played a crucial role in true romance. Evening arrives gently, the Nile whispering softly in the distance, like it's trying not to wake the stars. You find yourself drawn away from the village centre and out toward the riverbank, where a group of villagers have gathered with mats and small bowls of fruit, reclining under a sky that is rapidly filling with glitter. It's stargazing time. In ancient Egypt, looking at the stars wasn't just a pastime, it was a way of understanding the universe, a cosmic mirror that reflected myths, gods, agricultural calendars, and occasionally someone's romantic frustration. See that star? It rises every night, unlike your cousin, who promised he'd come to the temple dance. Tonight, the sky is unusually clear, and even the crickets seem to pause to admire it. You settle onto a mat beside an older man named Hori, who points upward with a date-stained finger. That one there, he says, is Sopdet. You might call her Sirius. She's the brightest and the most important. He explains how her rising just before dawn marked the beginning of the Nile flood season, and how this event reset their calendar year. Without her, he says, we wouldn't know when to plant or pray. She keeps us alive. He says it like a fact, but also like a whispered secret passed down from the stars themselves. Next to him, a young boy pipes up, and that one is the hippo. He's pointing at what looks like a slightly crooked collection of stars. She guards the pregnant women. He's referring, of course, to the goddess Taweret, often imagined in the stars as a fierce and protective hippopotamus. The boy nods proudly. She chased a bad spirit out of my cousin's house once. You ask how he knows. He shrugs. My cousin said so. Nearby, a priest reclines with his palms up, eyes half closed, as he recites a story about Nut, the sky goddess who arches over the earth, her body glittering with stars. She swallows the sun each evening, he murmurs, and gives birth to it again every morning. A child gasps. "That's a lot of work." The priest smiles. "It is, but she never complains." You glance skyward. The Milky Way stretches overhead like a path of crushed diamonds. To Egyptians it was a celestial river, a mirror of the Nile. Some believed the souls of the dead travelled along it to reach the afterlife, ferried by Ra himself or guarded by Anubis, depending on the version. Historians still debate how much of this was literal belief versus poetic symbolism. But in the hush of this night, under this sky, it all feels very real. You lie back on the mat, the cool fabric against your skin, and the scent of blue lotus in the air. Someone plays a soft tune on a reed flute. You don't recognize the melody, but it matches the stars. Gentle, drifting, infinite. Around you, families murmur quietly, pointing out constellations and sharing half-remembered stories. A scorpion chased by a goddess, a lion hiding from the moon, a falcon carrying the soul of a lost king. You ask a girl next to you what her favourite star is. She points to one barely visible, low on the horizon. "That one," she says confidently. "It only shows up when you're thinking about someone." You consider telling her that's not how stars work, but then think better of it. Who are you to argue with star magic? A group begins a low chant, soft, melodic, repetitive. Not quite a song, not quite a prayer, just a sound to fill the night and keep time with the heartbeat of the sky. You find yourself humming along, even though you don't know the words. Maybe you don't need to. As the night deepens, someone brings out a tall jar filled with crushed dates, honey, and fig wine. They pass it around slowly, each person taking a small sip. It's not about drinking, it's about sharing something sweet under something vast. A reminder that life is small, yes, but also beautiful, especially when you look up. Then come the questions. Where do the stars go during the day? Do the gods live behind them or on them? What if one falls? Will it land in the Nile? Answers are offered in gentle tones, half-truths, and myth blending comfortably. One elder says stars are holes poked in nut skin, so we can see glimpses of the Duat, the realm of the dead. Another says the stars are ancestors watching over us, blinking with approval or annoyance depending on your behaviour that day. Then there's an old man who swears he once saw a star wink at him the night before his first child was born. And that child cried for 3 days straight, he adds. The star was warning me. Everyone laughs. Parenting, it seems, is always under surveillance, celestial or otherwise. A quiet moment falls again. You feel it settle across the group like a shared blanket. The wind rustles gently through the papyrus reeds. Somewhere in the distance, a frog croaks, probably one of the rebellious ones that avoided relocation during the flood. The stars keep shining, oblivious and dazzling, above it all. In this stillness, you feel something shift, not dramatically, but deeply. The stars aren't just points of light anymore. They're threads, connections, memories, promises. The villagers aren't just stargazing, they're remembering their place in the cosmos, their ancestors, their children, their gods. The Nile flows beside them. The stars glow above them. And in between, they live, laugh, argue over barley stew, and dance barefoot in the mud. You stay long past the last flute note fades, long past the final fig has been nibbled. Someone gently taps your arm and whispers, "Time for rest." You nod, rising slowly, body sleepy, heart full. Tomorrow your journey will end. You'll close this chapter of village life with one final evening beneath the palms. But tonight, you carry the stars with you, tucked somewhere between your breath and your heartbeat. They've been watching you. All along, you wake before the sun. It's the kind of morning where the silence feels thick and sacred, as if the world is holding its breath just a little longer before the first light arrives. You lie still on your mat for a moment, letting the coolness of the clay floor soothe your warm skin. The air smells of damp reeds, faint smoke from last night's fire, and something sweet. Figs, maybe, or just the promise of rest well earned. Your body moves slowly now, every motion deliberate. You're not in a rush, no one is. This day is different. Not because of any grand ceremony or village task, but because today is meant for drifting, for pausing, for saying quiet goodbyes to a world that has wrapped around you like linen in the dark. You step outside. The Nile shimmers faintly in the pre-dawn light, soft as liquid glass. Birds begin to stir, chirping sleepy notes that barely rise above the hush. A fisherman paddles past in a reed canoe, cutting a perfect line through the water. He nods to you, not hurried, not distracted, just present. You walk slowly through the village, passing mud brick walls still cool to the touch. The goat rests peacefully beneath a sycamore, chewing something invisible. He looks at you and blinks. No mischief today. Even he feels the stillness. At the edge of the river, a few villagers are already gathered. Some sit on baskets, others lie flat on their backs, arms behind heads, staring up at nothing. It's the quiet time. No words, just breath and river. You settle into the soft sand and close your eyes, and when you open them again, the sun has risen. Just enough to warm your cheeks and gild the tops of every reed and palm. Light reflects off the Nile like spilled gold. It's almost too beautiful. Almost. A young girl sits beside you. She doesn't speak. She simply hums, barely audible, just a little melody she must have heard from her grandmother. You hum with her, a two-note lullaby to the world. Someone begins to bake bread. The scent wafts over the village like a thread, pulling people from doorways. A woman gently brushes dust from a wall carving. A cat stretches, then flops over, as if to say, "That's all I've got today." And honestly, fair. There's no urgency, no grand finale, just life. You spend your final hours walking slowly, touching everything with your eyes. The marks of soot above a cooking fire, the grooves in a well-worn doorframe, the pile of discarded palm fronds a child will turn into a castle, the spots where water has left its kiss on stone. People nod to you in passing. Some smile. No one says goodbye, because in this place time doesn't end. It flows, like the Nile, like the stories passed between firelight and fig trees, like laughter echoing off clay walls. You are here. You are here. And in some quiet way, you always will be. You return to your mat one last time, lying back as the village carries on around you. The sky above is wide and soft. You close. Your eyes again, and the river hums. Let yourself drift. Let the warmth wrap around you. Let the Nile carry your thoughts away, like a reed boat, silent and steady. You've walked the fields, swum in the river, tasted the bread, and heard the stars. You've known the village, and now it's time to rest. Now let yourself sink deeper into the quiet. The fire has burned down to soft embers. The laughter has faded, gently tucked beneath the linen folds of sleep. Somewhere nearby, the last echo of a flute note dissolves into the night. You lie beneath a blanket of warm air, the soft brush of linen against your skin, the distant lull of the Nile flowing like a whispered story. Everything slows. The animals are still. The reeds sway with a hush-hush rhythm. Even the stars blink more slowly now, content to watch without shining too brightly. Your breath is soft, your limbs heavy, relaxed. You're safe here. The village has folded you into its rhythm. It knows your footsteps. It knows your silence. No need to do anything more. No need to move. Just breathe, in and out, like the river. Let your thoughts drift downstream. Let your body rest. Let the stories you've gathered curl up quietly beside you, woven into dreams. Tomorrow, the Nile will rise again. Bread will bake, children will laugh, the sun will stretch over fields of gold. But tonight, all of that can wait. Right now, you're still. You're home. You're part of something ancient, something gentle, something eternal. Sleep comes easy. The stars are watching. The river sings low, and the village dreams with you.